When he says it, he means it, and you don't get to bend it and twist it to what you want. To reach the lost Israelites, the message has to go to everybody, and then the whomsoever wills will come. The ones who he draws will come. By the way, knowledge meaning what? Having a relationship with the truth. Oh, you learned, and you got tons of information, but have you come into a relationship with truth? the prize here, he's telling us this crown of life that we're looking for, he says, is connected to what's called the high calling of Elohim and Messiah. So we are called to become like him. That is the goal. And when we receive the crown, it's because he receives a crown. We know he's crowned with many crowns. And if we're going to receive one, it's only because we become like him. That's what we're pressing forward to. That's what we're pressing on. That's what we're pressing in on. The whole thing is, are we going to go to the end? Remember we read in the enduring part, he who endures till the end shall be saved. That's in Revelation. And so you have to make it to the end. Now, all of us will make it to the end. I don't care if you get hit by a car tomorrow, you'll make it to the end. But what are you doing today? In other words, at some point, you'll get to the end. But you don't know when that's coming. So, just like the athlete who knows that someday in the future I may compete in a world championship or a World Series or the Olympics or something, I know that every day now is going to make a difference then. You know, there was I don't know if this is an urban legend, but there was a very famous violinist that was being interviewed about his practicing. Okay? He says, if I miss one day of practice, probably nobody would even notice, not even me. He said, if I miss 3 or 4 days, I'll notice it. If I miss more than that, everybody will notice it. See, we can't let up. We have to press on. It's a 24/7, 365 thing. Are we transforming and conforming into his image? What are we doing in our growth? Are we understanding that this is a race that starts from the time you came out of the womb and he opened your eyes? Not that moment you came out of the womb, but from the time somewhere between coming out of the womb and he opened your eyes, from that moment forward, when he opened your eyes, your ears, and your heart, you're now in the race. Welcome to the game. Now run and get that prize. Here's the cool part, though. The cool part is not only one person wins. Everybody that finishes the race, giving it everything they've got, gets the same prize. But it's those who finish the race giving it everything they've got. Finishing the race doesn't get you anything. You have to finish giving it everything. That's why he tells you, love Yahweh your Elohim, what? With all your heart, all your might, all your being, all your strength, with everything. By the way, that verse doesn't say do it once a week or 5 minutes a day. He says all the time, 24/7, every day, love him with everything. That's asking a lot. Well, he's offering you the most that anybody could ever offer you. I mean, don't you think eternal life is if I told you I had a prize, let's say that prize was something you know probably cost me $10. Would you expect to put on a whole lot of effort to get a prize that's $10? No. Okay? But what if that prize, think about it when you're at the fair and they're offering a little stuffed animal this size and it doesn't take a whole lot to get enough tickets to get that. But what about the 4-foot one? That's a much bigger prize. They expect you to do a lot more to earn it, don't they? Well, we're being offered the greatest thing that could ever be offered. What could you offer anybody greater than eternal life? Anything? So shouldn't that take the most effort?
Tough times come around now.
Oh, I didn't know that. We're all live now. Oh, just now. Okay. All right. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. All right. If you'll all stand, we'll rise for the sounding of the shofar. Amen. Amen. All right, let's go ahead and sing praises to our King.
Yeah, getting there. Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Eveinu Shalom Alechem. Eveinu Shalom Alechem. Eveinu Shalom Alechem. Eveinu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Alechem. Eveinu Shalom Alechem. Eveinu Shalom Alechem. Eveinu Shalom Alechem. Eveinu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Alechem. Shalom, Shalom Yerushalayim. Shalom, Shalom Yerushalayim. Shalom, Shalom Yerushalayim. Shalom, Shalom Yerushalayim. Shalom, 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 Shalom Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Jerusalem shall live in peace. Shalom, 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 Shalom Yerushalayim. Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. 6 days of the week, anticipate and see the first of His feast. It is Shabbat. It is Shabbat. Thank Yahweh. It is Shabbat. Thank Yahweh. It is Shabbat. Thank Yahweh. It is Shabbat. It was given as a sign to His people for all time. Yes, a covenantal sign. It is Shabbat. It is Shabbat. Thank Yahweh. It is Shabbat. Thank Yahweh. It is Shabbat. Thank Yahweh. It is Shabbat. We came into the world to remember and observe
Come, let us praise the Lord and sing him a new song. Come, let us sing his praise together with the saints, with all the righteous ones. Let Israel rejoice in her Creator. Let the children of Eretz Zion be glad in their King. Let them praise his name with dancing, making music with the tambourine and harp. For the Lord takes pleasure in his people. He will crown the humble with salvation. Let the saints rejoice in this order. Sing and dance unto the Lord. Come, let us praise the Lord and sing him a new song. Come, let us sing his praise together with the saints, with all the righteous ones. Let Israel rejoice in her Creator. Let the children of Eretz Zion be glad in their King. Let them praise his name with dancing, making music with the tambourine and harp. For the Lord takes pleasure in his people. He will crown the humble with salvation. Let the saints rejoice in this order. Sing and dance unto the Lord. Let them praise his name with dancing, making music with the tambourine and harp. For the Lord takes pleasure in his people. He will crown the humble with salvation. Let the saints rejoice in this order. Sing and dance unto the Lord. Sing and dance unto the Lord. Sing and dance unto the Lord.
Arise and shine. Arise and shine. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. And the nations shall come unto thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. Lift up thine eyes round about and see, they gather themselves all together. So arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. And the sons of those who afflicted thee, and all who have despised you will bow down. Then they shall call you the city of the Lord, Zion of the Holy One of Israel. So arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. So arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. Oh, arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. Arise and shine, for thy light is come. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee. The glory of the Lord is seen upon thee.
Praise you, Lord, you're the rock of my salvation. You I praise from shore to shore in all your creation. Let it ring from mountain tops, let my voice proclaim the tender mercies of my Lord. Yeshua is his name. Messiah of Israel is he, restorer of our nation. The hope of David now we see, bringing us salvation. Root of Jesse, Lion of Judah, Judge of Israel. Now we praise you for your joy and love that never fails. Jesse, Lion of Judah, Judge of Israel. How I praise you, Lord, you're the rock of my salvation. You I praise from shore to shore in all your creation. Let it ring from mountain tops, let my voice proclaim tender mercies of my Lord. Yeshua is his name. Yeshua is his name.
shine brightly. He made the animals in harmony. He made you and me, and we'll sing. Who sits on the throne? You worship him in your home. Yahweh, Yahweh, who's in the night? El Shaddai. He is the King. He is the King.
Amen. Sing praises to his name. Who wrote those songs anyway? Yeah, so the mom goes, hoo-hoo. Oh, Father, we come before you, and we are just so excited and blessed to be able to come and sing praises to your name because we know you are the King. And so, Father, we are blessed to come on a day that you cared enough about your creation, us, your creation, to give us this time, a time that you knew we would need for restoring and refreshing and rejuvenation, and just to be able to put aside all of the thoughts, concerns, and cares of the world, to be able to come and be completely immersed in you and what you're doing in our lives and in the world. And so, Father, we thank you for caring so much as to create the Sabbath day for us at the beginning of all time. And then for giving us the guidance and instructions to keep it, knowing full well that it keeps us way more than we can keep it. So, Father, we thank you as we come before you now, singing, dancing, and making a joyful noise, expressing the love and the joy we have in being your children and being able to come and celebrate with you, the overflow of the abundance that's there. And so, Father, now we ask that you would be with us, that you'd lead and guide all things so that all things would be to your glory and to your honor. So, Father, we thank you, praise you, giving you all glory and honor. In the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. 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 You may be seated. You're muted, so you're okay. You can unplug it if you want. All right. So this is the time and the tradition here at Beth Shalom and MTOI that we take up the prayer needs and the prayer concerns of those within the body, within the congregation. And so I'm going to start, before we even get started, by saying that I want to ask all of you, I'm praying for patience. Because I know this is for the live streamers. I'm looking at you guys. Okay? Please be patient, because I know that there's about, 25 to 30% of you that would love the cameras to stay on the dancers. There's probably another 25 or 30% of you that would love the cameras to stay on the words. And then another third of you maybe that would like the cameras to stay on the singing and the praise team. And probably a third of you that could care less, or a quarter of you, whatever. But okay. But bear in mind that we can't please all of you. And we do have the ability to split the screen, but guess what? Probably more than half of you are using something this size. You're using a cell phone. There's a little bit of feedback here. What? Using a cell phone. And you know what? The split screen doesn't work all that good on a cell phone. Then you got two really small images of whatever two things we put on there. So we're doing the best we can. I do apologize for that. I know that a lot of you, where you are, you'd like to dance along with the dancers, so you'd like to be able to see them. Or you'd like to sing along with everybody, you'd like the words. And so, it gets to be a little bit challenging. Okay? We do not have a license, because some of you will contact us asking for the words, and we don't have a license to give you the lyrics. We have a license to put it up on the screen during our live performance, and that's why you'll see a little licensing code, on the bottom of the last slide of a lot of the songs. Okay? Now, of course, I can't stop you from going out there and figuring out how you can find the lyrics. They're all over the place, and you might find them. So considering the fact that we do a lot of the songs, on a sort of rotating sequence, once you have those kind of in your, little songbook you might want to put together, then you should be having no problem putting those things together for you, knowing what songs we're singing and finding that, working it out. But again, I'm asking for patience, knowing that I did get a barrage of little notes during Passover and unleavened bread from the dancing side. And apparently the word side was on live stream last week, trying to push the word side agenda. Hey, I will not please all of you. It's impossible, okay? So please be patient with that. Okay. So that being said, if you're here locally, we have a mic that will be going around by Nate. And then if you're on the live stream, we've got Rob manning the live stream desk. And that should work it out. We'll begin with Rebitz and Julie.
Is it on? Yeah. Okay. Shabbat Shalom. I just want to ask prayers for Stephen, who stayed home today because he's been coughing a lot this week, and we just thought it would be best if he just didn't cough here. So, hi, Stephen. I also want to give praise because, as my husband said, who wrote those songs? My daughter wrote those songs when she was baby. I prayed to Yahweh that he would give her a voice to sing praises to him, and I just feel so blessed that he honored my prayer request.
Amen. Amen. From the minute she came out of the womb, we knew she had a voice. Wow. Okay? We just were praying that it would be used for him. Because you didn't have any problem knowing she had just come out of the womb the minute she came out. But praise Yah, she has a beautiful voice and a talent to write. And you know what? These are all songs that, Marty knows very well playing the bass on them and having played bass on the album. But you know what? Manny and Michelle and Chris and Frederick, they did not get to play on those things. So to be able to pick them up and play it live and make those adjustments, great job on all of you. Okay? And exciting to hear some of the songs that originally were guitar songs go back to guitar. They were on the album, ended up being keyboard or whatever. We did different things different ways. And so that's why, in case some of you are wondering, wait a minute, that was not played on guitar on the CD. Well, Brianna didn't play on the CD except the ukulele, and He is the King. And so when she originally wrote them, she played some of these songs on guitar. So that's why we have those guitar songs. Anyway, all right. So who's next? Where's the mic? Okay, over here, Shira.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I am pleased to say that I actually do have my new neighbors, Evie and Owen Zamora. And they send their love. Evie is home feeling under the weather, so they're with us on live stream, but they send hugs and miss everybody. And I got them now. I also have an unspoken for myself, but it has to do with deep emotional adjustment. And I'm very glad for Shabbat, because Shabbat is a day when miracles happen, and it's a day when we can forget about our stuff and focus on Yahweh.
Amen. Amen. All right, who's next? Okay, Angelia.
I just have a couple of praise reports. 3 weeks ago, I was fretting over the new owner of the campground and asking for prayers for favor with this new landlord. And I thank Yahweh that he gave me that favor, because I just finished paying my rent for June yesterday. And while I'm still looking for that full-time employment and working really hard, it's great to have that favor with the landlord. Secondly, Tanis has been well all week, and his pleuresy's gone. And thirdly, during the work week, I was disgruntled about having only part-time work, and Yahweh just whispered to me, do your utmost. And I went home and I did my utmost, and I have been very, very busy looking for that full-time employment. And there's phone calls coming in, and I'm going to be busy answering all these phone calls for new possible interviews. And I want to give credit also to David Hayes and Manny. I'm learning that not only submitting to Rabbi, but this other strong leadership within the congregation, even though I may not agree with things that they're saying, doing what they say is paying off.
Amen.
So those are my 3 praises.
Amen. Thank you, Angelia. Okay, Rabbi Tom.
Thank you, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I have would like several unspoken requests for family members, and I'd like us all to remember our South African brethren, and also Kevin in Lebanon and his wife. I understand he was moved out of ICU. And lastly, I would like prayer that Yahweh will bless me with some part-time work.
Amen. Amen. Right there. Okay. Shannon?
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
I just wanna praise Yahweh that it is Shabbat, and I just ask for your prayers for me at my new job at Mars. The last couple of days were more rough, and I've realized that a lot more expectations have been put on me since we moved here, and I pray that Yahweh gives me the strength to be my utmost or do my best, and that's all I wanted to say. I just want to praise him again. That is Shabbat, for giving us this day to restore us and just have a fresh start again. Thank you.
Amen. All right. Look, all of you got to recognize that in life, especially once you become Torah observant, as Shannon said, you're going to have the opportunity to be stretched. In other words, to elevate, to meet the challenges that you maybe have not been asked to meet up until this point. And it's going to stretch you. And that's good, because we can become very comfortable and even get complacent. I'm not saying that's the case here, but until someone demands more of you, you don't even know what you're capable of. And so that stretching can be really good, because then you discover you're actually able to do more than you even think, or handle more than you thought you could. So that's good stuff. But of course, it's not fun and it's challenging, so we want to pray for people as they go through the stretching process. But it's a good thing, and we all experience it to some degree. Okay, Deirdre?
I'm just praising Abba that my child is very, very, very active. For one. Just give Mommy a second, okay? Let me talk to Rabbi. Thank you. So we're excited that this is our last Sabbath living in Dalton.
Yay!
Yay! That we'll be moving into our new apartment on Monday, and I'm very grateful to Abba. This is the very first move where I haven't felt stressed.
Awesome.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome.
So I know this is of him. So, and not only am I not stressed, my husband isn't stressed either. So this is just coming all together, and I just pray that will continue until the move is over. Once the move is over, I can go into full panic mode. But
there you go.
or not, yeah.
Excuse me. Okay, Christina.
Hi everyone, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I wanted to praise Yahweh for the things that he's doing. It's so easy sometimes to get kind of down about the things that are going bad, but in all of the stuff that goes on with that, you can still see how he's working behind the scenes. And right now, he is helping me be able to move into this new position. Well, it's not really a new position. The patient that I'm with is going to a different nursing agency, so I've got to get hired with them to be able to stay with her. So he is helping me be able to move into that very quickly, and I'm very thankful for that. So,
Amen. Amen. Thank you for sharing that, because I know we were praying about that since last week. Okay, who's next? Okay,
yes.
Michelle?
I want to say to Yeshua, Yahuwah, I've lost an enormous amount of weight since February. 30 pounds is a lot for me, coming out of my divorce and staying home. And so I want to thank him for that. And I've been loving the gym, and I just continue to pray that Yeshua will answer all my prayers and concerns about the next 30 pounds that I plan to lose. So I also like to pray for my neighbors, granddaughter and her family. They're having a really trying time right now. And I also would like to ask Yahweh, Elohim, to consider praying also for my sister and my immediate family, my son, my other son, and my husband, and coming to open their eyes to the Messiah, Yeshua, Hashem Emmanuel ben Elohim. And that's my number one prayer, is that if you can't beat them, maybe he can open their eyes and they'll join us. So I'm just grateful that I've had a lot of on time with my son lately. I've been able to explain to him the destiny of the world without being interrupted or hung up on. So I'm just very grateful for also the Beth Shalom Messianic congregation. It's so nice to go to Beth Shalom and it say Messianic at the end of it. So, and I also thank you for your covering. So I wore my hair down. I've never done that. I've been married for 4 years, and so I've always worn my hair up. And then before then I was married, wore my hair up. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of really interesting experience.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Who's next? Candace?
Rabbi, we have a lot of people that have recently become unemployed, and we really need to lift them up because, you know, we get comfortable where we're at, and we have a living and stuff, and suddenly we're knocked down several pegs, and it can cause panic and worry and stuff. But I think that it's a time of testing for all of us. And there's one particular person that I'm thinking of right now, and I'm not going to mention names, but we really need to pray for them. They've been a big blessing in my life in many, many ways. They've helped me to refurnish where I live, as well as listen to me when I was really down and out. And they were just there for me in so many ways. And I really want Abba to lift them up during this time.
Amen. Amen. I think I want to say, I want to say something about those that are struggling with unemployment issues. I want to give you some encouragement. Two things. One is, don't get hung up on ideal initially. I mean, you can look for ideal, but don't get hung up on ideal. In other words, you know you want this type of job and this is what you've been doing or that's what you want. But you know what? Depending on your level of financial pressure, if you happen to have a good cushion, okay, look for ideal for a little while. If you have no cushion, you need to get something and maybe two somethings temporarily till you can get the ideal. You don't have to stay at the temporary, meaning the thing that's a short-term fix to what you're doing, even if it's full-time, but you may need to do some things, and I've had to counsel some people about that, saying, look, you might have to do some things that maybe you'd rather not do, but you got to pay the bills, build a little bit of a cushion while you're looking for the ideal. A lot of the people that stay unemployed for long periods of time, it's because they have a very clear line that they don't go across as to what they're willing to do. In other words, there's something either below them or some other thing, and you have to, when you have to pay your bills, you can't have that line, but it doesn't mean you have to stay there. It's a short-term fix. Okay, I just want to encourage you that, you know, don't think that that's demeaning in any way, that you may have to get a short-term fix or whatever that is. And certainly, the most important thing is don't be afraid to counsel. Come and get counsel, and, you know, we may be able to give you some advice on and guidance on how to go about fixing the unemployment problem, because it's a problem. Okay? I've been unemployed many times, and finding new work can be challenging. It's a matter of what you're willing to do, though, and understanding the longer picture of it, the bigger picture of it, etc. You know, I remember we were visiting a congregation that's no longer affiliated with us, but it was a long time ago. It was a congregation that was affiliated, and one of the moms came up to me. She was an older mom with an adult son, and said that she wanted us to pray because her son was having a real challenge finding work that didn't work on Shabbat. But he worked in retail. And I said, your problem is not him finding work that doesn't work on Shabbat. Your problem is that he's not changed what he's trying to do. If you're going to keep working in businesses and industries that almost always need you on Shabbat, you're always going to have a Shabbat problem. Maybe it's time to start retraining and focusing in a different way on what you're doing. There's a lot of industries and a lot of jobs you could have that pay the same as what you're paying or better that never work on Saturday. But it's going to take maybe some commitment and work and retraining and retooling. And so I had to say that to the mom. I said, look, I know you've been asking this prayer request on and off for the last couple of years, whatever. I said, why don't we encourage him to get a different career path instead of going into jobs that eventually he gets fired because he won't work on Saturday? Doesn't that make sense? Okay? Well, that's all I know how to do, Rabbi. Well, then learn to do something else. But that's uncomfortable, having to learn something new. I don't know, you're here. To be here, you learned a lot of new things. okay? You learn how to eat differently. You learn different observances and different days. You learn all kinds of things. You learn how to understand a Bible you thought you knew in a completely different way. You're already good at this. You don't give yourself enough credit. You already had to learn new things. Okay, so but see, again, it's that foolishness that we can have, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody where we keep doing the same thing thinking we're going to get a different result. If you keep getting a job in retail or businesses that work the weekends a lot, and you're especially going to be the low man on the totem pole, the low woman on the totem pole, the new one, guess who's going to be asked to work Saturdays and Sundays every week? You. And as soon as you say no, guess who's going to be looking for a new job? So I'm going to encourage you that we can find ways to work through that. All right? And that we should be planning ahead so that the problem is resolved in a much more permanent way. Okay. Anyway, that was my life coaching for the day. All right, next question. Where is it? Okay, Amy?
So I just want to lift up little Daisy here. She turned 3 yesterday.
Yay!
So that's been exciting. And also, if you guys could just pray for me. I'm like on no sleep, as a new mom and can't sleep during the day. So it's getting hard for me to function without crying every other minute. So if you guys could just lift me up in that. And the other thing is, too, I have talked to Rabbi and Robinson a little bit about this. I'm struggling with my dad. And every time I think I'm over it emotionally, it comes back. So right now, I'm not allowed in his home for various reasons, unfortunately, none of which are from me. So I'm being blamed for my mother's actions. So I thought I was okay with it. I started writing a letter in response to his, and I'm not okay. So just pray for that, please.
Amen. Certainly we can, and we certainly could talk more about that later to encourage you in that. Just remember, there is scripture that says that, and it talks about Messiah, but in this case, whether it's Messiah or not, when you're picked on and blamed and attacked for things that have nothing to do with you, and you can take that in a right way, that sings praises about you above. Okay? Now, the scripture talks specifically when you're getting picked on about Messiah specifically, but I think that there's something to be said for when you are wrongly accused or wrongly involved in something and the finger's pointed at you when you really had nothing to do with it. And if how you handle that is going to make all the difference on how you're viewed above. Okay? So I just want to encourage all of us. That doesn't make it any easier knowing that, but just know that. That's why it's good to get counsel before you react. And as I've said often, do not do anything important, critical, and issues like that when you're still in an emotional place. Nothing wrong with writing the letter. Just don't send it till when you're more calm and you look at it again, because you may be okay with what you wrote, you may not. You just don't want to be doing things out of that emotional place where you're less likely to see things clearly. Okay? But we all go through a lot of things. Family is the best and the worst of everything. That's just, I don't know how else to put it. That's sort of just what it is. Nobody's going to make you more upset and rip your heart out more, and nobody's going to bring you more joy. Okay, so, and that's one of the things we just have to kind of accept, knowing that that's the reality. Okay, who's next? Okay, in the back here. Okay, Olivia?
Oh, hi.
You look familiar. Oh, wait a minute, that's because you were at my house for the last 2 days. Okay.
Yeah, that was fun. So, praise that my cousins are here from West Virginia. I haven't seen them in a while.
Okay, good praise. And you were a very welcome guest. Brianna had a great time with you for a couple of days. That was great. Okay, Dawn?
My grandmother, 90-year-old grandmother, the one that's in remission from cancer, and she's doing well. She was in the hospital with fluid on her lungs, and they pulled a liter of fluid off. And when she was able to start feeling better, she demanded to go home. She's a very independent woman, and she caused so much trouble for the nurses that they actually granted her request and let her go home. So she's home now, which is a good thing. They're going to find out what the problem is on Monday, so if you could keep her in prayer. Her name is Lois. And then personally, thanks to Rabbi's Council and some other things throughout the past year that we've been down here, I received my acceptance letter to go back to college 3 weeks ago. So I'm going back for my RN, which is both exciting and extremely scary. I'm already starting to doubt am I smart enough to do this? I'm old. I'm feeling a little intimidated, but I'm also excited about the potential and the hope for the future going forward. So
Amen.
if you could kind of keep that in prayer, that'd be great. Thanks.
Amen. Listen. I know that not all children go through the terrible twos, but also not all parents go through their version of it. Starts around 80, sometimes maybe 70 or 75, and they really it's kind of like that reverse mode. I mean, where they just become hard to deal with, very stubborn, and they will drive everybody, just like the terrible twos with the kid. Some people have parents that get that way, so let's pray for that and just recognize you did that to them when you were 2. They may do it to you now when they're 82 or 92. So just, it is what it is, okay? Because I do a lot of counseling with people that have, some very stubborn, very, unreasonable, because they get unreasonable. I mean, when they should be in like a hospital, but they want to go home, whatever it is, but they just can get unreasonable. But that's just the sort of the cycle of it, They took care of you, now you have to take care of them. And, they were very patient, hopefully, with you. You need to be patient with them. So it's not easy, though. But it kind of role reverses, and it's tough, okay? All right, Nadia.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
I would like to ask for prayer from my son. My oldest son is coming from New York next week for a week with his girlfriend, which he proposed to her, but she doesn't want to marry yet. So I would like prayer for that. And he comes safe, and that he would like to come to Shabbat services next Shabbat with her. So I'm going to be having a talk with her. So prayers for that.
I don't know which is scarier, being the daughter-in-law possibly coming to talk to the future mom, or being the son-in-law coming to talk to the future dad. But
oh my goodness. Please prayers.
All right. And talk to me after services about this. Maybe I have some ideas for you as well. Okay. Oh, by the way, this may be a good time, but I don't want to meddle in this particular thing, but maybe I could do this in a more general sense for all of you. Okay, this is important, but I don't want to sound like I'm meddling. But all of you who have older children may run into the possibility of older children coming with people they're not married to, of the opposite sex, wanting to then stay in your house and maybe do other things depending on what they're already doing wherever they live. They may be living together. They may have all kinds of other arrangements. You need to be really careful about what you're allowing in your house and the message you're conveying to your other children and the people around you. So just, and that's not to speak specifically to Nadia, but in general, this comes up a lot. We have a lot of people, who have adult children, in their 20s or 30s, who may have a significant other that they want to bring with them to visit and want to have them in their room in your house. I'm completely against that idea. As a matter of fact, if they're not married, I'd like them not to be in the same house. Okay? Okay? And they might not like that, but that's okay, especially if you have younger children who are watching what you're letting the older ones do. Okay? So let's just be real careful with that. Again, I don't want you to say, well, you're meddling and this and that. It's important the image that we're putting out and the message we're putting out to not only your children, but the other children that may be watching. Hey, well, they let it, this happen or whatever. So it's important, because otherwise the littler ones will tend to imitate the older ones. Okay? Sometimes the older siblings have way more influence over the children than the parents do. So be careful with that, because the children may look up to or idolize their older siblings. Okay, especially if there's a good size age gap and they're all impressed with their older siblings. So let's just all be careful with that. And so that was kind of a way for me to sideways kind of, indirectly counsel you a little bit on something, but this comes up a lot. And so just keep that in mind. Okay? And just draw those lines very clearly and see what kind of arrangements can be made. Okay, who's next? Okay, live stream.
Okay, from Rich and Lena Payne, praise Yah. Our family friend Hannah delivered twin girls. Prayer for baby Araya for good health.
Okay, amen.
From Jim Klein, prayers for our daughter-in-law who was in the hospital with fluid around her heart. And also prayers for my brother who decided to break off our relationship with him. Laura Vasos. Praise Yah, my mom is a cancer survivor, 1.5 years now. Prayers for her as she as her pancreas levels are up, and we are waiting for a consult with doctor to see what this means. From Cheryl W., continued prayers for my father as he slips further into Parkinson's disease. From Donna Stevens, prayer for guidance, strength, and courage, endurance for my family to help us all through our fight against meth, and for healing for my son. From Myrtle Walker, ask for prayer for my grandson, mom, who is having emergency surgery at this time. A mass was found in her stomach. From Aaron Sullivan, prayers for John. He has still some kind of stomach virus issue hanging on. Also unspoken for a close family member. From Ray Brock, prayer for my brother Bill Brock in Ohio. He just lost his wife of 60 years yesterday from a rare form of cancer. He is watching now for the first time. Alyssa Holmes, praise for this beautiful day and prayer for our neighbor Catherine, who feel better, and pray for my sister Candace, who is extremely suicidal. From MTY Lakeview, prayer request for Lisa Anderson, Aaron Sullivan, and Carrie, prayer for healing for the Flint household. Also prayer for Jim and Lynn Klein for their daughter who has become ill and hospitalized. Praise report for Ben Collender and family as he has a scheduled interview for a job that will be a great benefit for the family. Praise that Teresa's dad is finished with his radiation treatments. From Nathan Miller, praise report. After just a month of searching and prayer for my mom, finally found and made contact with her biological brother and her biological mother, who is still alive and in good health. Shannon Lopez, prayers for a friend who recently had a stroke. May Yah help her and remain strong as she recovers. From Aubrey and Jeremy Allen, praise. Thank you for everyone who prayed for Jacob. His fever broke today. The prayers were appreciated, and today is our anniversary. 8 years married, 18 years together. Claire Isaac, prayer request for Sarah for speedy recovery from a surgery. Ramona Bradhurst, please pray for my husband Wayne. He's having some hypertension and won't let me take him to the ER. Ed Ruiz, prayer request for my granddaughter for healing for a reoccurring skin rash, and a praise report for Yahweh placing me in a better position at work with better hours and maintaining my Friday and Shabbats off. Z. Francis, please pray for health issues I'm having for wisdom and for family members. I'm the only one in this walk. Jack Oxenrider, praising Yah for our daughter has been found. Please pray for favor in the legal stuff to sell property so we can be closer to move to Cleveland. From George Schmidt, prayer request from a mom who is struggling with serious health issues, including losing her voice. Betty Nevada, praise for all the blessings and benefits. Please for Elena Sanchez. She has been diagnosed for a colon cancer. She is receiving chemotherapy once a week. She is so weak. Rick Berry, praise Yah that Kevin Shutt has all of his tubes removed, is now in a regular private room at Hershey Medical Center. Will go to rehab facility in the coming days. Freddie G, prayer for my mom. She is in ICU. And praise Abba, I passed his CAT test. So next week I'll be going to MEPS. That's a military entrance. And swearing in Wednesday. Charlie and Deanne Johnson. Dean's grandmother, 90s, has dementia tendencies, setting in, has a Torah understanding but no longer under the covering. Adrian Bogle, been having ocular migraines more frequently over the last several days. They don't hurt, but they cause blindness for an hour or so. Cheryl T, prays that my granddaughter, who broke her hip last November, participated in her school's marching band in the Rose Parade in Portland. She's doing so well, and I'm grateful for everyone's prayers. From Pat Novak, my brother who came through bypass surgery yesterday, he is off the respirator, getting out of ICU. Thanks to the MTOF family for your prayers over these months. That seems to be all the urgent. We have many unspokens, many for for employment, and moves to Cleveland, and a few on some marriage issues. So,
amen, amen. All right, so I appreciate all of the praise and the prayers. Well, you got another one?
Yeah, I got one late one here from happy birthday to Nate Taylor and Craig Lane.
All right. We got those worked in there. By the way, somebody help me remember later after services, after sundown, to text my brother. Today's his birthday, and I will forget. And I usually remember if I'm within a week afterwards, I'm not too late, but I'm terrible at remembering birthdays. Of course, mine is on Tuesday, but so his is today. So if you can help me, I'm pointing to my wife. Remember to give him a quick text or whatever. That'll be great. Okay. That being said, we want to make sure that we're praying for all the unspoken prayers as well. We want to pray for those that have contacted the ministry over the previous time since the last time we got together, and which was last Tuesday with Torah study. And so I think that will cover for that. Why don't we go ahead and pray? Avinu Malkeinu, our Father and King. Father, we come before you and we want to recognize you as the source of all things, that you are the creator, you are king. And as king, all things that exist, and as creator, all things that exist are subject to your authority and your will. And so, Father, it's with a lot of awe and respect and reverence that we come before your throne to thank you and praise you for all the things you do in our lives, those small and great miracles that remind us that you're there, that you're aware of what's going on in our lives, and that you care. And so, Father, we want to thank you and praise you for all those things. We also want to appreciate the opportunity to lay before you our concerns and our needs. We are aware that you don't need us to say them because you're aware of what's going on in our lives every second and every minute of every day, but that you desire your children to come to you and to beseech you and lay before you our concerns and cares. And, Father, we are just appreciative that we can do that, knowing that you answer prayer, knowing that you hear prayer, but also knowing that your answer may be no or not now, may not be the answer we have been looking for in terms of the way we would do it, but yet what we're really looking for, should be looking for, is your answer, because your answer we know is always the right answer. So, Father, we thank you. We praise you, giving you all glory and honor. In the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. 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 Okay, Dawid's going to come up and lead us in the liturgy.
Baruch Hu et Yahweh HaMevorach, Baruch Yahweh HaMevorach Leolam Waed. Bless Yahweh, who is blessed. Blessed be Yahweh, who is blessed forever and ever. Amen. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. How goodly are thy tents, O Jacob, thy tabernacles, Yisrael. Ve'ani berov chazdecha avo v'techa eshtachave el hechal kodshecha
be'iratecha. And in thy great compassion I will come into your house. There I will bow, there I will fear thy holiness, O Yah, O Yah. Shema. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Waed. Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh is one. Blessed be his name, whose glorious kingdom is forever. Ve'ahavta. And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house, and on your gates. Altogether, Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Amen. Mi chamocha be'elim Yahweh, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot ose fele, ose fele. Who is like you, Yahweh, among the gods? Who is like you, mighty in holiness? You are awesome in praise, doing wonders, Yahweh, doing wonders, Yahweh. Veshamru, Veshamru b'nei Yisrael, HaShabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, בני ישראל אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה יהוה, עשה יהוה את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinatash, Veshamru b'nei Yisrael, HaShabbat, La'asot et HaShabbat, Ledorotam berit olam. Together, and the children of Israel shall keep the Shabbat, to make the Shabbat throughout their generations an eternal covenant between me and the children of Israel. It is a sign forever that in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Amen.
Amen. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get the chuppah set up for the children. Yes. And so as soon as the chuppah is set up, we'll go ahead and have the children come under. All right, let's get the children under the chuppah. Excuse me. All right, and once we get all the children under, it looks like we have them just about there. Good. We're going to be led in the blessing of the children by Mr. Nate Taylor.
Abba, Father, we thank you for this day. We're thankful for your Shabbat, that you've given us a day of rest, but not just to rest like we think to sleep, but to rest in your care, to rest in each other's time, and to spend time with each other in your presence. We're thankful that you give us this huppah, how they got it, how Rabbi got it, that we could fit so many children under here. And we're so thankful that one day we're going to need 2 or 3 of these, that the children of Israel will make a presence on the earth that will shine so bright through the children that you're raising up today to walk in your commands in the spirit of Yeshua. And we're so thankful for a teacher that's helping us to walk that out, helping us as parents to help teach our children to be obedient to your word. May they pay attention as we're walking this out. May we as parents pay attention to help our children walk this out. As you cover us and we learn to cover them. We thank you and praise you for this day. We pray that you'd go with them to their classes, be with their teachers today. For it's in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen ve'amen.
Amen ve'amen. Gadol class, you're going out towards my office in the hallway over here. That's where your class is going to be. Those that are normally going into the conference room over here, you're going out to the hallway. The Rebbitzin is going to be teaching the class. He's by the door. David, don't forget to unlock the glass door. The rest of you may be seated. You know, it's amazing, and I appreciate that Nate pointed it out about the chuppah. You know, I had that chuppah for a good maybe 2 years before we needed it for anything. But he provided it in advance. Well, I mean, we were able to use it at feasts, but I didn't need it. You know, obviously we didn't need it for something like this for a long time. We only had, 5, 10, 8, whatever it was, 8 or 10 children at the most. But, Abba knows what we need before we need it. So it just so happened to be that I was doing a guest speaking thing out in Wyoming, and Rico Cortez and I were sharing a stage, and they gave both of us one of those huge talit chuppahs to bring back with us, which I had to figure out how to stick that in my luggage and get it on the plane and everything, because even folded up, it's huge. And I hadn't planned that much extra room in my luggage. So, but it all worked out, so what a blessing. Okay. Ha'ma'aseh v'hatrumah, the tithes and the offerings. Now, we don't take up a formal offering here at the congregation. We do have the box over here in the back of the room. We also have donation buttons on our website, so we have those things. But we have to always understand that the purpose of tithing is to teach us to always put Yahweh first in our lives, and also to appreciate all of his abundant blessings. And so we do want to appreciate that, and so we want to pray for those that are diligently following the instructions about tithes and offerings. Blessed are you, Yahweh our Elohim, King of the universe, who commanded and made promises to us concerning the tithe and the offerings. May you open up the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing that cannot be contained as we walk in these mitzvot, in these commandments. Amen. Amen. Okay. Now, going along the lines of the idea of tithes and offerings, we do have a couple of programs that we work with that help support the ministry that you can participate in without spending any more money than you already do. And so we do want to let you know about them. We are part of 2 Amazon programs, the Amazon Smile program, as well as the Amazon Affiliation program. So as an Amazon affiliate, if you go to the mtoi.org website and you click on the link to Amazon on our website when you want to do your Amazon shopping, not today, not on Shabbat, but when it's not Shabbat, and whatever you purchase will then generate a referral fee to us. And of course, we're also part of the Smile program, which is their way of wanting to give back to ministries and nonprofits. The first time you go, you'll have to select who it is that you want to support. If you type in the 4 letters MTOI, it'll then bring us up. And then from then on, you would do your shopping at smile.amazon.com instead of the just regular Amazon.com. And of course, you can still sign into your Prime accounts and other things and all of that. So that being said, we are very much wanting to get this all worked out. I'm just distracted by, can we get the Gadol class to just stay out there or in here? But this walking back and forth thing is not going to work. Oh, they had all of their stuff in the other room? Oh, upstairs. Okay. Sorry. You guys aren't seeing it. I am, and it's distracting me. Okay. So anyway, so we do appreciate those of you that make the extra effort to either use the Smile program or the Amazon program. This does add up to a few $100s a month, which helps pay for some of the programs that we use and the things that we do. So it's very much a blessing. And the nice thing for you guys is that those of you that maybe want to contribute more but don't have the extra funds to do it with, you're going to buy those things anyway if you happen to be those who shop on Amazon, and so you're going to do it anyway, so that it helps. Appreciate that very much. Okay. What we want to do is welcome our guests. We have some guests here today. We want to help make sure they feel welcome. We are children of Abraham. We should have a focus on hospitality. We should be able to exemplify our heritage and lineage as children of Abraham. For those of you that are here, of course, we have our oneg after services. Oneg means delight. It's our kind of get-together fellowship meal, potluck meal that we have after services. If you did not bring anything, well, then you're out of luck. We don't want you to stay. I'm kidding. Don't feel bad if you didn't bring anything. We always have enough for everybody. If you're a guest and you didn't know, that's fine. Because I know sometimes people leave thinking, but I didn't bring anything. It's okay. I want you to stay. Please stay and enjoy the fellowship meal with us. Okay. Upcoming calendar stuff. Okay, upcoming calendar stuff. So tomorrow, we continue with Financial Peace University. And I know tomorrow's Father's Day, but I do want encouraged us that this thing is important enough that we wanted to do it anyway. So 5 o'clock tomorrow, try and get all your Father's Day stuff done before or after. Okay, it shouldn't be more than a 2-hour class, but if you could be here tomorrow at 5 o'clock when we start, and then hopefully we'll be done by 7 as we continue with the second class of that series. And I think that I've gotten really good feedback from those who were in the first class, so I think it's going to go well. Hopefully you're doing the assignments that are being given to you as well. All right. Just a reminder that there will be no class when we have the picnic and mikvah on July the 14th, okay? But there should be a class now every week until we get to July 14th. All right. Let's see. June 18th on Tuesday is our Torah study. And so, we're going to continue as we do every week with our Torah studies. And we're going to be doing them, just in case I wasn't clear last week, we're going to be doing them live here. Okay, so all of you here are welcome to come here on Tuesdays for the Torah study live. We do need you to be here, at least enough of you to do the readings. It looked like we had plenty for them this last time. It worked out. Okay, for all of you online, so we're not going to be doing the Adobe Connect thing. We're going to be doing the YouTube thing. And that means that if that continues to work well, that we should be able to get rid of Adobe Connect, which was a fairly expensive program that we had for quite a while, so that'll be good. Also, you'll need to be patient, though, because I know a lot of people were confused last week because we had some technical difficulties. Just, stand by, check out the Facebook page or the Marco Polos, and we'll try to post in there if we're having a technical difficulty. We believe it was a YouTube problem last week and not ours, but we just could not get it to work for about 10 or 15 minutes in or 20 minutes in, and then it finally started working. And quite frankly, even with all of that, we had almost 200 or over 200 people signed in, which is more than we ever get on Adobe Connect. And I think part of that's because people can just find us, where they can't find the Adobe Connect if they don't know about it. But people could just be running around YouTube looking for a study or something to do, and they'll find our Torah study there. And so we're going to be able to, reach and get more people to participate that are just finding us, just like they do right now with the live stream of services, okay? So that's really been a blessing. Okay, then on June the 23rd, on Sunday the 23rd, so a week from tomorrow, we have our leadership meetings. So those in leadership know who you are. You'll be in the meetings. David will be sending out an email reminding everybody later in the week before we get to the meetings. There will be no general session. So I know that always gets confused. I know not everybody pays attention when I say that. So there is no general session in June. We probably will do it in July. At least that will be my plan. Okay. And then, of course, July 14th is our picnic and mikvah. Okay. We have our picnic and mikvah on July 14th at Chester Frost Park in Hickson on Harrison Bay. We are still looking into the claims and issues, although I have not heard anything since. Nobody else has said anything since, so I'm thinking that it probably is not really a problem. The news hasn't been reporting anything going on there. Has anybody heard anything further? No. Okay. See, a lot of people saying about what? One person on Harrison Bay claimed that they got parasites and it was in their eye or something from swimming in Harrison Bay, and then we've not heard anything else since then, and so I'm not thinking that it's a problem. But if we get closer and we start hearing that there is a problem, we'll let you know. But right now, I'm not overly concerned, and we're planning to do it at Chester Frost Park in Hickson. Okay? Okay, this is some important announcements just for you guys here, but I think it's important that we get them out there. After Oneg, after we finish eating, after I do have you eaten and are you satisfied, and we finish eating and we clean up and we put the tables away, etc. Okay, the kitchen is closed. Now, some of you stay here for another 4 hours. That's not MTOI or Beth Shalom's responsibility to provide you with anything at that point. Okay, there will be no drinks provided. There will be no cups provided, because we had people going and getting ice and stuff and used up, you can't even know how many cups our kids and your kids used after Oneg last week between the two back-to-back services, okay? The kitchen is closed. We don't charge for any of that stuff. It comes out of just the MTY budget. Okay, we provide for it during the Oneg. The kitchen is closed once we're done cleaning up, and so no drinks, no cups, or any of that stuff will be provided. You want to bring your own stuff, that's fine. Bring something that you can snack on if that's necessary. Of course, we also don't force you to stay, for 4 extra hours after Oneg. We like that you do. But, so if you need to take care of the things. Also, we need to do a better job of cleaning up after ourselves and our children. Look, you know what your children do at home. You know what they do when you bring them to places and visiting other houses and restaurants. You need to go and look and see, because every week I come in here on a Sunday or a Monday and there's just stuff everywhere, because we're not doing a good enough job of policing after our children and after ourselves. Okay? It doesn't matter that you didn't see them do it. If you know what your children are capable of, then you should help go walk around in between the chairs and everywhere and help to make sure that we haven't left a mess. And plus, the other thing I don't understand is that there's a lot of you that seem very comfortable to leave your stuff here. How did you forget your stuff? I mean, there's backpacks and notebooks and Bibles and all kinds of things, water bottles that are just left here. So please, let's do a better job of keeping track of our stuff and not cluttering up, and also, cleaning up after ourselves, okay? I just think that this is our house. And it's a house that we use to worship and praise our King. Okay, so let's just see what we can do to do a little bit better job with that. Appreciate that. Okay. And so you're going to have to get that information out to your children, okay, because they're going to be walking into the kitchen. First of all, your children should never be going into the kitchen without you. Okay, nobody has permission to be in the kitchen except going through the food lines without an adult or without the ministry's leadership's permission. Okay, we do have stuff in the kitchen, but it may not be for them or for you, or maybe for the youth classes. Okay, that's happened in the past. Sometimes somebody will get into the snacks thinking that that's for everybody. No. Okay, your children know where some of these things are, and they'll go walking in looking for those things. Let's be careful with that and do a better job. Okay, I'll put down my scolding stick and we'll move on. No, it's not really that. It's an encouragement. I think we're all family, right? So as family, we should be able to do this and appreciate this. Look, you may see me. I will walk around and I'll pick stuff up right off the floor. I'm cleaning up, and, whether it's my kids or your kids, but let's see if we can do this more as a team. All right, I think that's going to cover it. So let's go ahead and get reset for the teaching. If you got a phone, go ahead and make sure it's turned off. All right. I'm going to set my timer here. No. Okay. Question was, do I take general questions before the service? No. You can ask questions after the sermon about the sermon. If you have other questions that you want to ask, you can always see me after services. Okay? Yes, you can. Okay. Almost forgot what I was doing here. I'm setting the timer. Okay, there we go. All right, I hope everybody's got their seatbelts on. We're going to be digging into some more of that Brit Chadashah stuff. And if you thought the head covering things was fun last week, we're going to get into more stuff bigger today. All right. Look, I slept an extra hour of sleep knowing that this is going to be exhausting today. Okay. Now, all right, are we ready over there on the cameras and everything else? Oh, we're good over there. Okay. Let me just see. You know what? I don't think I changed it on the top here. What part did we do last week? 42. See, I knew that. I didn't write 43 on the top here, so I need to fix that. Okay. I took last week's, edited it, continued it, and forgot to change the number on the top. All right, so. All right, here we go. Are you covenanted, part 43? Yeah. And we're continuing here in dealing with the Corinthian congregation. We're going to go to 2 Corinthians here. And we're going to read quite a bit here in 2 Corinthians, starting in chapter 3. But this one's going to be a little bit tough from the point of view of there's a lot of context that you can't get. If we just kind of walk through starting in chapter 3 and hit things as they come about, it's very hard to understand the framing. Now remember, we've talked about framing a lot in the last couple of weeks, where something starts and where it ends. Everything in the middle kind of fits into that frame or that context. So I want to hopefully get some of that framing here of the things that Shaul is trying to talk about. And the issue about covenant actually comes up only twice here, specifically in chapter 3, but we may take this thing all the way to the end of chapter 6 into chapter 7. So that's going to be quite a bit here in 2 Corinthians. But we will be dealing with some of the things that hopefully you'll appreciate the challenge of them, because these are some of the things that you get attacked by mainstream Christianity about on a regular enough basis. And so let's kind of talk about a little overview of the things that we're going to try to cover here. All right? So in chapter 3 and in verse 6, it says, now this is Shaul talking about, who also made us competent as servants of a renewed covenant, not of the letter but of the Spirit, but the letter kills. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. So that, anybody ever had to deal with that before? Okay, we're going to deal with that issue. We're just going to decide that Paul's a heretic and just wipe out 2 Corinthians and go on to something else. No, I'm kidding. No, I think we can kind of explain all this stuff, but you have to have the context, and that's where the problem is, okay? So he starts off in chapter 3 saying, are we to begin to recommend ourselves again? Or do we need some letters of recommendation to you or from you? So he starts off by, he's going to getting into a bunch of stuff, and he's reestablishing the authority that he has within the structure of the body. Now, part of the context that we need to have is, well, we should be asking the question, well, why would he need to be doing this? Well, because there were people in Corinth, just like there are people here in this congregation and every congregation since Paul's time until now, and even going earlier, we see this even in the Torah portions, who will choose different leadership than established leadership. And they missed the point. So there were a bunch of people then, just like today, coming from the more orthodox forms of Judaism or the other flavors of Judaism, who are trying to have influence over those coming into the body. Because remember, the body started off as a Jewish sect. And so here's Paul saying, look, you may be listening to a whole bunch of other people out there who are telling you you're doing this wrong or that wrong, or you shouldn't be doing this or shouldn't be doing that, but I thought you were under my authority, under Messiah's authority. And so Paul is trying to reestablish that vertical structure and his position in that vertical structure. So the issue has to do with authority, which is the same thing, by the way, that we had in 1 Corinthians. When we're looking at that, the whole section that we were looking at in 1 Corinthians 11 was about order, vertical alignment, being under authority, etc., in the context of the body or the assembly. So the Corinthian congregation is still having a similar problem that they were having at the first letter. And now in the second letter, they're dealing with those kind of things. So Paul has to start out with this idea of, say, do we need to begin again by reestablishing who I am and what we're doing, him and his leadership that was there? Do we have to kind of reestablish our positions? Do I need to bring you letters of recommendation? So this is a challenge here as we go through this. So framing is very important. Now, when we take that all the way to chapter 7 and verse 1, he says, having then, after all of what he said in chapters 3, 4, 5, and 6, which we are going to cover, he says, having then these promises, so we're going to have to figure out what those promises are that he says in those other chapters, beginning when he says, do I need to recommend myself again? All the way to here, he's going to talk about some promises. He says, let us cleanse ourselves from all defilement of the flesh and spirit, perfecting set apartness in the fear of Elohim. So the framework is, I have authority, and I'm here to help you with these promises. Be motivated to cleanse yourself of defilement of the flesh and spirit. And everything in the middle is dealing with that problem. Okay, we clear on that? He starts off with, I want to reestablish where my position is, because I'm going to need you to understand a bunch of stuff in order to, because of everything I'm going to explain to you, encourage you to cleanse yourself of defilement of flesh and spirit, and to focus on perfecting set apartness or kadoshness or holiness in the fear of Elohim. Everything else has to fit now into that frame. That's kind of our beginning and end points of that point. He then gets into some other stuff in chapter 7 going forward. But I want us to kind of get that framework as we go into it. So, in chapter 3, when it starts talking about things like the letter killing and the spirit giving life, it's got to fit into this context somehow. When he talks about things like let's see, with that which is passing away versus that which remains. Okay, that's another thing that comes up here in 2 Corinthians. Another thing mainstream Christianity will use to say, well, it's the Old Testament that was passing away, and the New Testament is what we have. And the law was done away, and the freedom of Messiah. They use these things, yes, no? Okay? Completely not what it's talking about. But let's understand what it is talking about. But we have to realize that as we're reading it, if we just zoom in on one verse, like verse 6, where it says, because it says, the new covenant is not of the letter, but of the Spirit, because the letter kills and the Spirit gives life. Well, if you don't know what he means by that, which, by the way, he doesn't explain right there. It takes a bunch of more verses in chapters 4 and 5 to kind of explain that, maybe even into 6. Then you have no idea what he's talking about. So you can't just zoom in and micro zoom. You have to have a more macro position. You got to zoom out and say, okay, what are the issues? Remember, context is, who's speaking? It's Rav Shaul. It's the Apostle Paul. Who's he talking to? The Corinthian congregation. What's the issue? Apparently, them hearing from a wrong group of people and having wrong authorities about some of the things that have to do with the law, the covenant, and their walk. Okay? Now, in that framework, the people that are most likely at issue here are the traditional Jewish members who just understand from a Jewish point of view, without Messiah, the context of walking according to the letter. Whereas with Mashiach, we understand there's the spirit of what was written, which is the fullness of what was intended. And so we have to understand that that's part of what we've talked about many times. So let's go ahead and start to read this beginning in verse 1 again. And as we start hitting on things, hopefully we'll see where the issues are and how those issues start to clarify. All right? But I'm going to ask you to be patient. This may take a couple of, 1 or 2 parts, or what it's going to take to get through these couple of chapters. And let Paul explain himself if we're patient. Okay? Okay, again, back to verse 1 of chapter 3. By the way, sometimes I feel that as a leadership, as a ministry person, I almost feel like verse 1 applies to me half the time. I have to talk to people like, do I have to go again and establish my authority and position in your life and that you came here and what you're doing? It's like, okay. Are we to begin to recommend ourselves again, or do we need, as some, letters of recommendation to you or from you? This is where some, I guess, might have been coming and saying, well, I'm under such and such teacher and so on, such, so you should be listening to me now. Okay? He says, you are our letter, having been written in our hearts, known and read by all men. I can say the same of you guys. Okay? Have you not experienced the leadership in this ministry? Has it not made any difference? Have you not changed your walk and adjusted things a certain way? So that speaks volumes, as they would say, as to what's been going on. Making it obvious that you are a letter of Messiah served by us. That's the whole goal of our leadership, and should be of any leadership, to be obvious that you are a letter of Messiah served by us. What does it say as our ministry sort of, catch line or motto or whatever it is, slogan? Working together to serve the body. So you should be clearly of Messiah served by us, written not with ink, but by the Spirit of the living Elohim, not on tablets of stone, but on fleshly tablets of the heart. Now, bear in mind as he's saying this, you should know, without going back to all of the parts of the heart of the matter, etc., where we covered this over and over and over again, how many times did you read in the heart of the matter teaching, as we went from Genesis all the way to Revelation, that which was written on stones was supposed to then be lifted up and brought into your heart? So Paul is referring to that idea. Yet Christianity is going to use this to use it as a separator between the two. To differentiate that was not for us now, that was for then, this is for now, using a very dispensationalist sort of way of looking at it. He's saying, no, those things that were on the tablets of stone need to now be written on our fleshly tablets of the heart. And such trust we have towards Elohim through Messiah. So his other big context going through this is, I really believe he's talking to people that say, you don't need Messiah. Just keep the commandments and you're fine. I think that's what's going on here. By the way, that's going on in the body right now. A lot of people are going right from Christianity into Messianic, right over into Judaism. That's the issue I think was going on right here. And he's saying, look, and such trust we have toward Elohim through the Mashiach, through Messiah. Not that we are competent in ourselves to reckon any matters from ourselves, but our competence from Elohim. So again, he's reestablishing his anointed, appointed status. He's saying, this is not of me and my flesh. If you don't see Elohim and Messiah working through me, well, then you need to be somewhere else. Okay? He's saying the competence comes from Elohim. Now, of course, that's only if you happen to be observing and see that there is competence. But recognize that competence is from Elohim. You know, I had a person a while back, I don't know what triggered this, I guess it had to do with the word competence and the whole thing here, accuse, because I don't speak in tongues, accuse me of not having the Spirit, and started telling everybody in the congregation that I was not qualified to lead the congregation because I didn't have the Spirit, because I didn't speak in tongues. Now, bear in mind, I sat down and had lunch with this person to find out what was going on, and he explained this all to me, and I looked him in the eye and I said, let me ask you a question. So according to what you're saying, that I don't have the Spirit, that means that you believe that the teachings I do are on my power alone. I said, I'm sorry, but I'm not that good. Okay? I mean, that's what I said, that, should you understand that's what you're saying? By saying I don't have the Spirit and I'm not qualified to lead, then everything I've ever done that you've told me how great it was and this and that and the other thing, that was all on my power alone. No. You all know that that can't be true. But see, that's the thing. He's saying here, look, my competence is only competence because Elohim, it's his competence. The competence comes from Elohim. Okay? Who has also made us competent as servants of a renewed covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. But if the administering of death in letters engraved on stones was esteemed, so that the children of Israel were unable to look steadily at the face of Moshe because of the esteem of his face, which was passing away, how much more esteemed shall the administering of the Spirit not be? For if the administering of condemnation had esteem, the administering of righteousness exceeds much more in esteem. For indeed, what was made esteemed has no esteem in this respect, in view of the esteem that excels. For if that which is passing away was esteemed, much more that which remains in esteem. Okay, everybody understood that completely, right? What? Okay, let's try to unravel this a little bit. Okay, so first of all, he says, the letter, it's not of the letter, but the Spirit. I would agree. They had the letter of the law. By the way, those who were walking the letter of the law, how many of them made it through the 40-year journey in the wilderness? 2. Okay, of those 20 and older. The letter did not provide life. Those who embraced the spirit of it found life. The fullness of what Yahweh intended. Okay? He also says in the blessing and cursing chapter, if you, and that's in the letter says there's curses. The letter says if you don't obey, this happens. The letter says a lot of things. So that's where the letter kills. If you don't obey the letter, it brings death. If you obey it in the spirit of the fullness of the intent, it brings life. Let's not confuse that the letter is evil and kills, but the spirit, this ooey gooey ethereal thing, nobody knows what it is, brings life. Well, that's not what he's talking about. He's saying the literal pashat obedience doesn't bring the life. It's doing it fully how he intended it that brings the life. With all your heart, with all your being, with all of your emunah, your belief, your trust, and your faith. They did it without the emunah, right? When they came to the land, they spied it out, and what did they do? They panicked. They had fear, doubt, and all kinds of other, negative. They didn't have the trust. There was no emunah. Emunah is the Hebrew for faith, belief, trust. And so he's saying here, you have to understand there are people trying to get your attention here, but they do not want you to have this other level. They think the way they've been going along for however many thousand years up to this point was plenty fine. We don't need this Mashiach guy. Now he says, look, if the administering of death in letters engraved on stones was honored, was glorified, was holy, so that the children of Israel were not even able to look at Moses' face because of it, So he's not saying it wasn't, he's saying it was. So now we got to be careful. Paul is saying absolutely that these letters that he's calling the administering of death in letters was enough to make it so you couldn't even look at Moses. So he's not saying it was bad, wrong, or evil in any kind of sort of way. He's saying it was so incredible that the one who brought the tablets down, you couldn't even look at his face. Now, that's not what you heard on Sunday. That's not what you heard taught in your churches. He's saying, however, how much more shall the administering of the fullness of the intent be? How much more? Not instead of, in addition to. How much more would it be? You're eating ice cream and you said you'd like more. What are you going to get, a hamburger now? No, you want more ice cream. You're eating ice cream and say, hey, can I have some more? This is more of. It is on top of. It's in addition to. It's not instead of. The problem that Paul is dealing with authority here is how people are looking at the law in an incomplete way, not whether or not they're looking at the law and shouldn't be. I'll say that again. The problem here is that they're looking at the law in an incomplete way, not that it's wrong or somehow they shouldn't even be looking at it. I'm going to prove this here. He's going to talk about it very clearly in other places as we keep going, okay? Now, what you also got to understand in the context here is that these people are very aware of what happened in Babylon. Not with Babylon, in Jeremiah's day when Babylon came to take them into captivity. They're very familiar with when the northern kingdom was taken away by Assyria. They're very familiar with the diaspora, the dispersion, and the scattering. They're very familiar with that punishment, that death, so to speak, that cutting off. And so he's referring to those things that were part of that. But when you embrace the spirit of the fullness of the intent, guess what? You're restored. So he's talking about restoration versus the status they were in at that time, which had a certain sense of condemnation, because they had received condemnation for breaking the commandments. So now he says, for if the administering of condemnation had honor. In other words, he's talking to an audience. He said, look, for if the administering of that which, when you broke it, brought condemnation on you, was still honored, not that it was condemned, but you were condemned because you broke. In the context, you can see that's what Paul's talking about here. If the administering of what brought condemnation on you had esteem, then the administering of righteousness, of what would bring righteousness onto you, would exceed even more. Because righteousness comes through fullness of the intent. Remember, they were mechanically keeping the law, going through the wilderness, and yet they still didn't make it across into the land because they didn't fully embrace with emunah, with faith, what was being offered to them. So let's be careful. When he says, for if the administering of condemnation, he's not calling that which he just called esteemed, so esteemed you couldn't even look at Moses, condemnation now. Let's see. So telling people not to murder, not to steal, not to commit adultery, this is all condemnation. By the way, I had a conversation with somebody the other day where they were talking about having a conversation with somebody who was coming out of the mainstream or still in the mainstream about all of this stuff and how the law was done away with. I think that next time somebody tells you that, you need to ask them which ones. And then ask them, okay, how do you know which ones to pick? Because they only want to pick the ones they don't want to do, like the eating differently and keeping different days. They still want to believe that you shouldn't murder, shouldn't commit adultery, shouldn't steal, blah, blah, blah. So my first question should be, okay, which ones are you talking about? Which ones were done away? Please show me the verse that tells me which ones. Because apparently it's all, but you know, they'll say tithing is something you have to do. Okay, well, tithing isn't even in the top 10. And theoretically was designed specifically for the temple service and the Melchizedekian priesthood, which they are not honoring either one. Okay, those are the only two places you see anybody receiving tithes. One of those two priesthoods. Ask them those questions. Because eventually you might get a guy like a Creflo Dollar, at least is honest enough to tell you even the 10 Commandments are done away with. Go look that up on YouTube. Okay? Because after all, if they're going to say the law was done away with, what part wasn't? Well, the parts we like. The parts we agree with. This is the problem. This is one of the problems. I shouldn't say it is the problem. It's one of the problems. So he says in verse 9, if the administering of that which brought condemnation had glory and honor, and it did, the administering of that which brings righteousness exceeds much more. For indeed, what was made esteemed had no esteem in this respect in view of the esteem that excels. In other words, he's saying, look, that was nothing. The glory and honor of that was nothing compared. He's making a comparison here. That's all he's doing. He's saying, this was great, this is better. But he's using language that confuses us because he says, this kills, this brings life. This brought condemnation, this brings righteous, glory and honor. As he's making these comparisons. Continuing here, then he goes in verse 11, for if that which is passing away was esteemed, much more that which remains is esteemed. Having then such expectation, we use much boldness of speech. So now when he's talking about that which is passing away had esteem, meaning that system that seemed to only honor and glorify the letter is passing away. It's more than that. It's not just that system anymore. We're now having a new system that's that plus, not that instead. We're not doing any replacement theology here, but that system that was limited to and did not go any further than is no longer the system that's going to be ruling in your life. When he talks about passing away here. Now, we have to understand where's the other verse I want to go to? That was in 3:11. Go to 4:18 just for a second. And it says, we are not looking on what is seen, but on what is not seen. For what is seen passes away, but what is not seen is everlasting. So now he's giving you at least a little context of what he's talking about. And we're not there yet, but I just wanted to jump there to show you what I'm talking about. So what's passing away is the physical, seen, letter of the law thing. And what's coming now is the unseen, which is when you do it in the fullness of its intent, it brings so much more. But you got to be able to embrace that reality. Okay, so let's continue so we can get eventually to 4:18. But I just wanted to use that for context, okay? Also in 4:11, it says, for we, the living, are always delivered to death for the sake of Yeshua, that the life of Yeshua might also be manifested in our mortal flesh. So that death indeed is working in us, but the life in you. So now, wait a minute. He just said the law brings death, or whatever it is that whatever Christianity is trying to tell you here, this letter brings death. But then he says, wait a minute, we the living are always delivered to death for the sake of Yeshua. In other words, there's things where you're going to have to die to self. All that me. Why did they mess up with the letter? I interpret it my way. I do it my way. I do what I want. It's going to bring death. Your self-sovereign, do it my way, do whatever I want thing is got to be passing away. The old way of doing things is passing away. We have a new framework, a new context. Messiah starts off with his very first message. You thought it was enough just not to murder somebody. I'm going to tell you wanting to kill them is bad too. Just as bad, he says. You didn't commit adultery. Hey, good for you. Well, not really. Why? Because you wanted to commit it. You desired it, you thought about it, you meditated on it. That's just as bad. But you think you're fine. This is the context in which Paul is teaching here. So he says, for that which is passing away was esteemed, and it was. Much more that which remains. So what remains? Then you have to ask your Christian friends, what remains? Because he's talking about remaining from that, if that's what he's talking about. Well, the flesh is going to pass away, and that which remains is the unseen. The flesh is passing away. The things that brought the condemnation, the law didn't bring condemnation. Our failure to submit to it brought condemnation. Did the law condemn anything? No. The behavior of the northern and southern kingdoms brought them the condemnations they received for what they did. But we also are told at some point in the future, and you see that starting with Messiah, there would be restoration for all of them. Those that were lo ruchama, lo ami, no mercy, not my people, would be called the children of the living Elohim. Oh. And that's part of the Messiah's message. It's part of what Paul's talking about here. So now hopefully we get a little bit of better understanding when it talks about for that which is passing away was esteemed. It was. But much more that which remains. So what remains? What remains, hopefully, is understanding in the fullness of context what the law's purpose was It wasn't just a bunch of do's and don'ts. It needed to be embraced as a way of life because it brings transformation from what you are into what he is. It's a transformative thing. When we talk about the Spirit versus the letter, also in chapter 5 and verse 5, it says, now he who has prepared us for the same purpose is Elohim, who has given us the Spirit as a pledge of what is to come. So he gave us a sense of the fullness of the intent as a pledge of what is to come, which is us becoming him. Us putting off the corruptible and taking on the incorruptible. So hopefully we're having some of that context here. So what was going on here? Let's continue. Verse 12, having then such expectation, we use much boldness of speech, not like Moses, who put a veil over his face so that the children of Israel should not look steadily at the end of what was passing away. But their minds, listen now, their minds were hardened, for to this day, when the old covenant is being read, the same veil remains not lifted, because in Messiah it is taken away. In other words, a revealing that there's more. Not that that's bad and awful and should be done away with, but that there's more. They're still hearing only that limited understanding. There's a veil there. They're not going further. He says, but to this day when Moses is being read, a veil lies on their hearts. So this is a heart issue and a thinking, a mind issue. It's not a law issue. Just read what it says. Don't add anything or take away. I mean, Paul's very clear here. He says, their minds were hardened, and there's a veil lying on their hearts. So he didn't say that the information was bad or wrong. It's how they were thinking about it and how they were embracing it emotionally in their hearts. This is important. By the way, we know there's other places that talk about having a hardened heart and being estranged from the blessings and the promises and being walking in the delusion of your own mind and all that other stuff. And so we know that these things are also in here. You know, we look at Ephesians 2. We go there a lot. Verse 1, and you were dead in your trespasses and sins in which you once walked according to the course of the world, according to the rule of the authority of the air, of the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience. So there's a spirit there, not a good one. He says, but we have to understand that this was a time where he says that they, in verse 11, therefore remember that you were once Gentiles in the flesh, you were called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision made in the flesh by hands, that at the time you were without Messiah, excluded from the citizenship of Israel, strangers from the covenants of promise, with no expectation and without Elohim. Wow, that's pretty clear and straightforward. And all of this happens because they didn't have their mind open. Okay, so it talks about in verse 5 there, he says, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Messiah. By doing what? We talk about this in the Father and Son teaching, by opening up our eyes and our ears and our hearts. Can we understand that only 2 of the men 20 and older had open eyes, ears, and hearts? The others had closed hearts and veils and problems because they panicked and they were afraid. And even if they weren't ones that were the 10 that spied the land, they were listening to the 10. They were influenced by the 10 and weren't listening to the 2 who said, hey, what are we waiting for? Let's go. The land is great. Look at the size of this big bunch of grapes we just brought out of there. Oh, don't worry about the giants. Elohim says we're good, we're good. Remember, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago or whenever it was, week last or whatever, about you embracing, if he's called you, stop fussing and fretting over whether or not you can make it. He called you knowing. I've had counsel sessions about this, and if you're watching now, I am talking about you. I'm also talking about the 25 other people that had this problem last week. So many of you are starting to really have a huge struggle, or you've always had a struggle, embracing that he knows everything you did up until the moment he opened your eyes. So stop thinking that he was just doing it as a cruel joke. Because some of you are thinking, well, I'm never going to make it because I did this. But he knew that when he called you. You did all of that before he opened your eyes. Do you not think he's aware of what you did? All that stuff? Yet he called you anyway, knowing you can do this and you can be in. And so stop worrying about that and be embracing it, thankful for it, and walk in it. Let's continue. So here's a problem. Their minds were hardened. It doesn't say the law was bad. The minds were hardened. And when the Old Covenant is being read, the same veil remains. So what it's saying is, when the Old Covenant is being read, they're still not seeing it correctly. He didn't say the Old Covenant was the problem. He says they're the problem. They're seeing it with veiled eyes and veiled hearts, or hardened minds and veiled hearts. And when one turns to the Master, the veil is taken away. Verse 16. Now Yahweh is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of Yahweh is, there is freedom. So part of the other problem was those who looked at the law as a burden, and some of you still do. Of course, even we have to read Yaakov James's book, and where he talks about in his letter that it's the Torah of freedom. When you look into the Word, the truth, the Torah of freedom. So Yahweh is Spirit, and where the Spirit of Yahweh is, there is freedom. And we all, as with unveiled face, we see as in a mirror the esteem of Yahweh, are being transformed into the same likeness from esteem to esteem as from Yahweh, the Spirit. He's now endorsing what I was making the point of, is that all of this was supposed to be transformative. You wonder sometimes, maybe, wonder where Rabbi got that stuff. I don't know. There it is in 2 Corinthians 3:18. We are looking in the mirror, and we're seeing the esteem of Yahweh, and are being transformed into that same likeness by not the letter, but the spirit of that which was on the tablets. That which was on the tablets was never the problem. The people with the hardened minds and the people with veiled hearts interpreted it to be a problem. Hopefully we can receive that. All right. Okay, we got a lot of time. Good. Verse 1 of chapter 4. Therefore, in other words, based on all this stuff we just said, having this service, even as we receive compassion, we do not lose heart. So now he's referring back to himself and the leadership, but have renounced the secret ways of shame, not walking in craftiness, nor falsifying the word of Elohim, but by the manifestation of the truth, recommending ourselves to every human conscience in the sight of Elohim. So now let's understand what he's talking about here. We have renounced the secret ways of shame, or the secrets of shame. In other words, we're not doing anything in private. Okay, the things you do in private are usually the things that have shame linked to it, that you're trying to hide something, sort of from an idiomatic point of view. He says, but we have not walked in craftiness, nor have we done anything that would be falsifying to the word. When Yahweh spent all of that time saying, this is our covenant, you are going to obey everything that comes out of my mouth, this is good, it brings life, all the way through the end of Deuteronomy, anything that we would say against that would be falsifying the word. He said, we are not falsifying the word, but by manifestation of the truth, seeing it walked out in a more full way, okay, that's bringing a recommendation. That's recommending ourselves to everybody. And indeed, verse 3, if our good news has been veiled, it has been veiled in those who are perishing. In other words, again, those who have the veiled hearts. They're not hearing it. They're not receiving it. He says, not that we're not saying it. If our good news has been veiled, it's because it's been veiled by those and in those who are perishing, in whom the mighty one of this age has blinded the minds of the unbelieving, so that the enlightening of the good news of the esteem of Messiah, who is the likeness of Elohim, does not shine on them. Again, do you see the problem? It's consistent. It's not the words that were on the tablets. It's not the law. It's the person with a blinded mind or a veiled heart. Okay? He's consistent the way he's pointing the finger at the people, not at what Elohim gave, not at the laws itself, but at the people who had their problems. He said they've had their minds blinded so that the enlightening, so that, in other words, he would shine light, he would shed light on these things, cannot be received because they are blind. For we do not proclaim ourselves but Messiah Yeshua, the Master, and ourselves, your servants, for the sake of Yeshua. He says, we're not proclaiming ourselves for our own purposes. We're doing this to bring glory and honor to Messiah and to what the Creator is doing. For Elohim, who said, let light shine out of darkness, is the one who has shown in our hearts for the enlightening of the knowledge of the esteem of Elohim in the face of Yeshua Messiah. So what he's trying to do consistently here is bring context to those who may be embracing the Torah but are not embracing Messiah as part of the context of how we apply it. Does it make sense to everyone? The law itself is not the problem here. It's how the people are approaching this issue of, remember, it's hard for us here. We are a mixed multitude who comes together. Very few of us in this particular room are Jewish, in literal sense. So we don't have that dichotomy that was going on in this time of Paul. The vast majority, thousands and thousands and thousands of members of the body were all Jewish. And now all of a sudden, these non-Jews are coming and getting involved. And guess what? There's a rift. There's a challenge of coming together and not seeing the other person. It's like if you have a society that's all white and a society that's all black, or all yellow, or all green, whatever it is, and you look, and now all of a sudden you're coming together, and all you can see is there's a difference. Instead of saying, no, but you're a man, and I'm a man, you're a woman, and she's a woman, but why don't we just see that? Why do we see color? Well, here they're seeing previous background by birth. They're seeing genealogy. And they're saying, hey, we with the genealogy know better than you do. That's why Paul says, what, do I have to bring you letters showing I was a student of Gamaliel and I've got all of these, endorsements to show that I know what I'm talking about as a Benjamite? Do I need to do that? Actually, in one of the letters he does that, right? He says, here I am, a Hebrew of Hebrews, a Benjamite, student of Gamaliel, I know what I'm talking about. And by the way, he would be in big trouble claiming that lineage and talking about the law in any negative sense. There's just no way. He would be shaming his teacher in the biggest of ways. I mean, huge. He would be shaming his teacher in the most egregious way. To claim that lineage and then say what is most dear to his teacher is somehow bad and death and awful and kills, and that's not the problem here. He's saying, look, a problem is that the mighty one of this age has blinded the minds. Let's give Hasatan credit finally where it deserves to be. The mighty one of this age is blinding the minds. The problem is he's only blinding the minds of the willing participants. Those who willingly don't want to see it. You want to see it, it's right there. Elohim will open your minds. The thing is, he's got to disturb your peace. You've got to want to see it. Because he's poked a few people, disturbed their peace, and they still don't want to see it. Don't be a willing participant. The willingly ignorant, the willingly blinded. He says, for we do not proclaim ourselves, but Messiah Yeshua the Master, and ourselves your servants for the sake of Yeshua. For Elohim has said, let light shine out of darkness, is the one who is also shown in our hearts. Now, when he says, let light shine out of darkness, he's not saying the law was darkness. You were darkness. We read that in Ephesians, that you were walking in darkness. But let the light shine in the darkness, is the one who's shown in our hearts, because that's where the darkness was, for the enlightening of the knowledge of the esteem of Elohim, in the context of the face of Yeshua Messiah. And by the way, the face meaning seeing him. When I say to you, I want to talk to you face to face, I want to see you, you want to see me. So that's what we're talking about with the face there. And we have this treasure in earthen vessels. So this treasure is in our physical body so that the excellence of the power might be of Elohim and not of us. Being hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Being perplexed, but not in despair. Being persecuted, but not forsaken. Being thrown down, but not destroyed. Always bearing about in the body of the dying of the Master Yeshua, that the life of Yeshua might also be manifested in our body. Okay, so here he's contrasting that Messiah who put on a flesh suit physically died. The flesh must die. So the resurrected Messiah who is now resurrected, that we can have that resurrecting within ourselves as well. The flesh must die. So he says, always bearing about in the body, in your body, the dying of the Messiah, that the life of Yeshua might also be manifested. For we the living are always delivered to death for the sake of Yeshua, that the life of Yeshua might also be manifested in our mortal flesh, so that death indeed is working in us, but the life in you. So here he's actually saying for him as leadership, saying, I'm willing to get killed, persecuted, and done all these things to get the message to you so that you might have life. See, all of you are somewhat invisible. I know you come up here and wave at the end of the service and all that kind of stuff, but you're really somewhat invisible. Very few people out there, except because you bring attention to yourself, maybe posting something on Facebook, are being attacked in the way that somebody like me would for being out there openly doing this. There has to be those willing to take the bigger throws of the stones and the arrows and everything else that are coming at you, all the garbage and junk, because we're willing to, for your sake, to bring life, put ourselves in a position where people can throw stuff at us. That's what Paul is saying, okay? He's saying, I'm willing to do all of that so that you can have life. So I can bring you the message. But having the same spirit of belief, according to what has been written in verse 13, I believed, therefore I spoke. We also believe, therefore we also speak. Knowing that he who raised up the Master Yeshua shall also raise us up through Yeshua and shall present us with you. For all this is for your sake, so that favor, excuse me. For all this is for your sake, so that favor, having spread through the many, would cause thanksgiving to overflow unto the esteem of Elohim. So all of this is to bring glory and honor to Elohim. Elohim did not spend all the time from the beginning all the way until Paul's talking here, giving the commandments, expecting people to keep them, punishing them for breaking them, only to say that somehow doing away with them or ignoring them is now going to bring him glory and honor. We have to have at least the tiniest bit of logic in our heads, okay? Let's try to be at least a little bit rational in our thinking. What mainstream Christianity has taught you is completely illogical and irrational, and the only reason you bought into it is because you were blinded. You had a veiled heart and you were blinded. Otherwise, as soon as that was pulled away, what did you see? You saw, this is completely illogical and irrational. It makes no sense. By the way, I'm reading this here, and this is also endorsing for me the strength of the veracity of this, because I see this playing out. It's written here, and I see it happening today even. In your lives, your testaments too, or testimonies of this happening. Right here. Where did I leave off? Verse 16? Okay. Therefore, because of all that he just said, we do not lose heart. But even if our outward man is perishing, the inward man is being renewed by day. There's part of our context. When he's talking about these things, he's talking about it's a contrast of the outward man and the inward man. The outward flesh and the inward spirit. The fleshly outside of us wants to just me, I, but that inward part, the part that dwells on things and thinks about things more and is concerned about things in a much bigger way, not the now, me immediacy, that's being renewed, while the outward part, with all of its desires and all of its lusts, is dying and perishing. This is still in the context of what he's comparing when he's comparing the letter and the spirit. We're still in that same context of what they're struggling with here in Corinth. Let's remember now, in that context, he says, do not lose heart, because even as our outward man is perishing, the inward man is being renewed day by day. For this slight momentary pressure is working for us a far more exceeding and everlasting weight of esteem. So this is going to going through this process is going to bring even more honor and glory. We are not looking on what is seen, but what is not seen. For what is seen passes away. But what is not seen is everlasting. By the way, we could take that back to the same thing with the spies. The people went and spied out the land. They saw big walled cities, huge people, armies, and all kinds of things going on. They saw that. Of course, two of them saw, wait a minute, we could see what Elohim would do to this place, and he would take care of those armies, and he would take care of those walled cities, and he'll take care of all of those challenges. We see the milk and honey and the big grapes and all the other wonderful things. It's a beautiful land. But are you focusing on the fleshly eyes or the spiritual eyes? See, the fleshly eyes saw the giants and the walls and all that stuff. The spiritual eyes are seeing it as Elohim sees it. So they take that back to the law. You see the law one way. How does he see it? Thou shalt not commit adultery. Well, how did you see it? A lot of them saw it as, well, as long as I didn't really sleep with her, or as long as I didn't sleep with him, hey, I'm good. Then Yeshua says, no, Elohim sees it a little bit more than that. So let's understand. Some of you may say, when it says not to steal, well, you know what? We're actually told in some of the expansion in Leviticus chapters like 16 through 20, somewhere in there, that you can steal by not working hard and giving an honest day's work. You can steal by not paying your employees on time in the way you're supposed to. There's all kinds of stealing that's not actually taking somebody's stuff away from them. So when you do the things that you do, you could be stealing. Okay, you go to work and you find yourself spending a whole bunch of time doing all texting or whatever you're doing, or playing on Facebook or whatever thing you're doing. You're stealing your employer's time, even though you didn't literally go into one of the shelves in the office there or the factory area and literally take something and stick it in your pocket or whatever. But you're stealing. So are you willing to accept a more full understanding of these things as opposed to just going, well, I'm going to look through it through the fleshly eyes. I'm just going to look at what I see. What I see, not what he sees. Are you going to look at things through his eyes? Okay, what's the way that you're going to see? It says here, well, actually, we didn't get to that chapter yet. Let's go into chapter 5. I'm just looking at my notes. I made a few bullet points. And by the way, if I look a little disjointed with some of this, I wrote almost all of the bullet points 15 minutes before before we started. So that's the way the rock works sometimes. All right. Chapter 5. For we know that if the tent of our earthly house is destroyed, we have a building from Elohim, a house not made with hands, everlasting in the heavens. I don't know. Is it just me, or is he still talking about the body, the flesh, versus the spirit that way? He's still not talking about the letters and the laws and the things written on stones. The problem is still having a house, an earthly house, being destroyed so that we can have a heavenly one. He's still talking about you, your flesh. For indeed, if in this we groan, longing to put on our dwelling which is from the heaven, so that having put it on, we shall not be found naked. For indeed, we who are in this tent groan, being burdened, not because we wish to put it off, but to put on the other, so that what is to die might be swallowed up by life. So what's dying? Are we all suffering and struggling because we just won't let go of the law? Is that what he's saying? Or are we all struggling because we won't let go of the flesh? The me, what I want, the desires of the me, the I. What I want, what I don't want. That's got to die and be swallowed up by life. Now he who has prepared us for this same purpose is Elohim, who has given us the Spirit as a pledge of what is to come. Okay? This is important. It's a pledge of what. Therefore, being always of good courage, and knowing that while we are at home in the body, we are absent from the master. Oh, here's another good verse they love to use. This is not talking about out-of-body experiences. This is not talking about some ooey-gooey spiritualization. When you are at home in your flesh, you are not connected with the Elohim, with Messiah, with the Master. So to be absent the body is to be present with the Lord, as you've always heard these things saying, meaning when you are not focused on your flesh and me, I, you are now walking in the presence of Elohim, presence of Messiah. When you're walking, aren't we told that when we're walking in our flesh, we are cut off? Okay, so when you are at home in the body, you're absent from the master. The same thing goes the other way around. If you are absent the body, meaning you are not focused on, and your mind is not focused on Anybody remember that they took attendance in school? How many of you were absent, but you're still sitting in a chair in the classroom? Do you understand what that's what he's talking about? You could be there, but you're not there. He's saying to be absent of the body would be to be present with Yahweh, and the other way around. To be present in your body, to be present in your flesh, means you're absent with the Master. It's not real complicated. However, it's been so badly taught for so long, it's hard for us to understand. It's Christianese. It's a phrase that should be simple to understand, but it doesn't go that way anymore. He says, look, verse 7 explains it as we go forward. Because we walk, this is what he's talking about in the previous verse. Absent or present has to do with what? Your walk. He says, because we walk. Okay, so what we're doing determines whether we're absent or present, where we're absent or present. Now, if we're going to walk by emunah, by belief, and not by sight, which is the way I see it versus the way he sees it. Take it that way. Belief is the way he sees it, and I'm going to embrace that, or by sight is the way I see it. So if we walk by the way he sees it, not by the way we see it, we are of good courage and are well pleased, rather to be absent from the body and to be present with the Master. Because if we're going to see it his way, that will be the case. This is not one of those things that has to do with going to heaven or doing other things. This is not a out-of-body thing. This is just a metaphor for where your head's at and where your heart's at. Is your heart on you and the flesh, or is it on him and his ways? If it's on him and his ways, then guess what? You're absent the body and you're present with him. If it's on you, then you're in the body and you're absent with him. It's not really complicated. So we also make it our aim to be well-pleasing to him, whether being at home or being away from home. So now he's talking about, hey, whether I'm traveling here to where you are, traveling there, he says, we want to do what's pleasing to him. And also he's talking about it from a deeper sense, whether I'm in this fleshly body, I want to be pleasing to him, and whether when I get transformed into an incorruptible body, I want to be pleasing to him. For we all have to appear before the judgment seat of Messiah in order for each one to receive according to what he has done in the body, and here's the key, whether good or evil. And what defines those terms? The Torah is good, bending, perverting, and twisting it is evil. What could be more evil than telling you it's done away with? Telling it's no longer valid. Go do a word study and figure out, according to Scripture, what is good and what is evil. He says, don't forget, we are all going to appear before the judgment seat of Messiah in order for each one to receive according to what you have done. It doesn't say according to what Messiah did. You're going to receive according to what you did. I know that's a hard one for those of you that maybe are brand new and just coming out of the churches because you've never heard that, because after all, there's like zero accountability and you are not responsible for anything according to the way Christianity teaches it, except to choose Messiah the way they see it. Otherwise, everything bad is the devil's fault, everything good is Messiah's credit. You get nothing for you. No, you're going to get judged according to what you did in the body. Now, you could talk about in the body, him saying in the body, meaning the body of Messiah. No, you're going to be judged according to what you did in this fleshly body. Because that's the context he's been talking about. Absent the body, present the body, blah, blah, blah. You're going to be judged according to what you did in this flesh suit. And by the way, Paul's very consistent about this. Romans 2 says the same thing. Lots of places Paul says the same thing. You will be judged according to your works. I don't know how much more simple it can be. Even all the way in Revelation 21:22, it says that Messiah is coming and he's bringing his reward with him to give according to what you did, according to your works. It's the very last thing in the book, in Revelation 22. In verse 12, I come speedily and my reward is with me to give each one according to his works. That's the very end of everything. And yet still, what you do matters. Why? Because it demonstrates where your heart's at. It demonstrates whether or not you have the two great commands. Are you loving him with all your heart, might, and strength, and are you loving each other with the same thing? Are you having the right understanding of the relationships he desires you to have? And it's all about the relationships. Let's keep that in the context there. Because we're all going to appear before the judgment seat. Verse 11, knowing therefore the fear of Yahweh, we persuade men, but we have been made manifest to Elohim, and I also trust in your consciences to have been manifested. Now look, first of all, let's stop at the beginning of the thing where it says, knowing therefore the fear of Yahweh. Go back to the teaching called the fear of Yahweh. Fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom, the beginning of understanding, the beginning of knowledge. It's step 1 in Deuteronomy 10:12. Hey, we haven't gone there in a while. Okay? And now, Israel, what does Yahweh ask of you? Moses tells us, Deuteronomy 10:12, but to fear Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in all his ways. Do you think Deuteronomy 10:12 all of a sudden gets negated here in the New Testament? And now Israel, what is it? Oh, well, that was for Israel is what they'll say. Yeah, but see, it's all the way about Israel all the way to the Revelation 22. There's nothing in this book from the time it becomes about Israel where it ceases to become about Israel or to be about Israel. Now, the good news is everybody can become Israel. It's a covenantal process. You have to covenant. What's the covenant? We've been talking about this for 43 parts. Yahweh says, if you do what I say, then you get to be Israel. Romans 11 talks about it. We're going to get to that eventually here when we get out of Corinthians. I think we're going to Romans next. And eventually on chapter 11, we're going to start a little bit further for context earlier than chapter 11. But when we get there, you got the olive tree, and you got the natural roots, and you got the grafted in roots and all that stuff. But it's all about being Israel. Go listen to Discovering Your Identity if you don't know what I'm talking about. Okay? It's part of the Covenant Community 101 series. All right. Back to where we were here. So, verse 11, knowing therefore the fear of Yahweh, how could you have the fear of Yahweh and say the law was done away with? Can there be two more opposite concepts? I'm serious. I mean, in pure simplicity, can there be two more opposite concepts than fearing Yahweh and doing away with what he said? He says over and over, like 1,000 times from Exodus to Deuteronomy, do, guard, obey what I say. This is all I want you to do. He says, knowing this fear, this is how we are approaching it. He's talking from leadership. Knowing therefore the fear of Yahweh, we persuade men, but we have been made manifest to Elohim. So in other words, he's saying Elohim knows what we're all about. Because remember, he started off in chapter 3 saying, hey, do I need to come up with more like resumes and letters from people recommending us? He's still on that same kind of establishing his authority here. He says, we have been made manifest Elohim. We know that he's judging everybody. We got to appear before the seat. And I also trust in your consciences to have been manifested. In other words, I'm saying, I trust that you've seen also what I've been doing in your lives here in Corinth with this congregation, is what he's saying. For we do not again commend ourselves to you, but give you an occasion to boast on our behalf in order that you have an answer for those who take pride in appearance and not in heart. So again, he's going back to some of these people that are doing for appearances, but they're not doing it from the heart. Their hearts are still veiled. For whether we are beside ourselves, it was from Elohim, or whether we are of sound mind, it is for you. For the love of Messiah compels us, having judged this, that if one died for all, then all died. And he died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised. So he's saying, look, you were bought and paid for. The whole point, look, the reason they were brought out, why were they brought out? This is for the Jewish side of it, right? He's talking to people that might be being influenced by that. Why did he bring them out of Egypt? He brought them out of Egypt. He bought them with a price, same idea, so that they would serve him for his purposes. Nothing has changed. Just a deepening of the understanding, taking it to another level, building on the foundation, not wiping it out, not contrary to, but building upon. And Yeshua does that with every word he says. He takes what they already knew, and he's speaking to a Jewish community, and he builds upon it. he says, I forgot where I left off. Excuse me. Verse 16. So from now on, onwards, we know no one according to the flesh. If we have known Messiah according to the flesh, yet now we no longer know him thus. In other words, we're not knowing him just according to what the people have said about the world and the flesh. Okay, yeah, we know. Christians have the same problem. They know him according to the flesh. They know Messiah came and that he died and was resurrected. And that's kind of about it. There's no deeper understanding to what he did, why he did it, what the purpose was, who he was, who he is, etc. And so he's saying, look, from now onwards, we know no one according to the flesh. We've had our eyes open. If we have no Messiah according to the flesh, yet now we no longer know him that way. Therefore, if anyone is in Messiah, he is a new creature. In other words, that old mindset, that old way of thinking has been passed away. That's what's died. That's what needed to be killed off. That's why we talk about burying the old man when we go in the water. We get immersed. We're putting to death in our members the old ways. Well, these are all more quotes that Paul says in other places. He says, therefore, if anyone is in Messiah, he's a renewed creature. The old matters have passed away. Now, the word matters is in italics, so that's not in the Greek. It just says the old has passed away. See, all have become new. Now, the word matters is inserted. It's not in the Greek. If you have anything in your Bibles that's in italics, it means that it was added because someone thought it would help in clarity. But if we have the context here, it's saying, look, if anyone is in Messiah, a renewed creature. You're a new creature. I mean, it's talking about this is a new idea. The old has passed away, and all have become new. There's a renewing, there's a clarity, there's a refreshing. And all are from Elohim, who has restored us to favor with himself through. This is the key. All of this is about restoring to favor. Ooh, why were they not in favor? Well, because they were trying to keep the law. No, because they were not trying to keep the law. Because they were not obedient, they were not submissive, and they certainly weren't doing it with emunah, with faith. So now he's trying to say this through Messiah is bringing about a restoring of favor to himself through Messiah Yeshua, who has given us the service of restoration to favor. That is, that Elohim was in Messiah, restoring the world to favor unto himself, not reckoning their trespass to them, and has committed to us the word of restoration to favor. Now, follow this here. That is, that Elohim was in Messiah, restoring the world to favor unto himself, not reckoning their trespasses. What is a trespass? They were stepping and breaching over lines they shouldn't have stepped over and breached over, and it had to do with their obedience and submission to Torah. That's what got them out of favor. That's what got Assyria to come. That's what got Babylon to come. They were out of favor because of their choices. Remember the teaching, making decisions is the reason you exist. It's all about the choices we make. He said, but he has come to bring and restore back to favor those who were, by not reckoning their trespasses to them. In other words, he's made it possible that your trespasses can be wiped out, provided you don't keep walking in them. In other words, they earned their punishment, but there's a path back where that punishment which you earned is no longer reckoned to you. They earned being lo ruchama, no mercy. They earned being lo ami, not my people. They earned it very well. But they also turn around and earn being called children of the living Elohim. And it's through acceptance and understanding that there's a restoration process that Yeshua begins here. Verse 20. Therefore, we are envoys on behalf of Messiah as though Elohim were pleading through us. We beg on behalf of Messiah, be restored to favor with Elohim, for he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of Elohim. This is what it's all about. But he's not saying that we become the righteousness of Elohim because we now can do whatever we want, And we get to decide what's righteous. Because even Yeshua, when he says, someone said to him, well, good master, good teacher, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, whoa, hold on, time out. No one's good but one. In other words, one gets to define what good is. Go listen to, I've said this a couple of times in this teaching series, go listen to Well Done, Good and Trustworthy Servant. Part 1 teaches you what good means, okay, according to Scripture. Let's see. I think we need to be finished before we get to chapter 6. Hopefully that's enough for this week. Okay, we'll continue in chapter 6 next time. But this is important stuff. We need to grasp the context because it all comes down to him saying in verse 6, he says, who also made us competent as servants of a renewed covenant. And so we have to say, well, what is that renewed covenant all about? What is he talking about with the idea of covenant there? But then also he tells us in verse 14, but their minds were hardened, for to this day when the old covenant is being read. So the whole idea of covenant is mixed in here, and we have to understand what's the letter, what's the spirit, because otherwise we have no idea how to deal with this stuff, and you're going to have to, if not already, deal with this stuff. So hopefully this is becoming more clear, more simple, but the context is key. What is really going on here in Corinth? Let's go ahead and pray. Father, we want to come before you. We want to appreciate and thank you so much for your word and for whatever inspiration and guidance you may have given me that is of you. Anything that was not of you, please just have everyone ignore it. But that which is of you, Father, have people embrace it. Have them to see and understand that it was not from me and my flesh, but from you. And that, Father, since we mostly just read the word, help us to truly embrace and understand it in context, to know what it was that the writers and speakers in the word are talking about and to that audience and what their issues are. So that, Father, that we can truly be absent our body so we can be present with you. So that we're not in our flesh, that we're not in our fleshly mind and fleshly hearts, but that we're vertically focused on the things above so that we can be restored to favor through Messiah Yeshua. So, Father, we want to thank you, praise you, giving you all glory and honor as we come to you, appreciating that he became sin for us so that we could have that. Well, he says he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us so that in him we might become the righteousness of Elohim. We would like to be looked at and known as the righteous ones of Elohim because the sin that stained us can be removed through Messiah Yeshua. So, Father, we thank you. We praise you, giving you all glory and honor in his precious name, the name of Messiah Yeshua. Amen. 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 I'm going to have to write here. So we ended at chapter 5. Okay, just want to write that down. All right. Whew, I told you it was going to be exhausting. All right, hopefully that made some sense, helped a few people, clarified some things. If not, you could always call and we'll talk privately. We'll try to figure it and sort it all out. If you got a comment or question, this is what we call the afterburn. So welcome to the afterburn. And so we're going to bring a microphone around for those who have comments or questions about this teaching specifically. And so if you're online, Rob is still manning the online desk there. And so he'll take down your comments or questions, and then we'll get those over the mic as well. And we'll begin with Mr. Kirk. Well, I think the HH2 is muted, Marty.
Thanks for that concept with the absent from the body, present with Elohim. That's amazing. I've never seen that before. Also, I wanted to ask you about John 4:23, where Yeshua talks about worshiping Him in spirit and truth. Is this a continuation of that?
Absolutely. Okay, because when he says that he seeks those that worship in spirit and truth, and we talked about this over and over and over again, is the idea of the truth being the letter and the spirit being the fullness of how the letter was intended. Okay? And that's consistent with all of Messiah's teachings as well as everything else in Scripture. You know, when they got in trouble, it wasn't just because they weren't keeping the letter. A lot of times they were doing it without the fullness of how he intended it. And he always intended it to be done in the form of emunah, with full, confident, complete trust and belief in him and what he's doing, and that he would do his part and take care of the things that he needs to take care of, etc. And that's really the key, is that they lacked that peace. Not peace like as in shalom, but like that element. They were not doing it with the emunah. Now, of course, if they did, they'd have the peace, like as in shalom. All right, who wants the mic? Either I did a really good teaching or everybody is stunned, or a combination of both. All right, Candace?
Rabbi, your teachings are always kind of similar, and the fact that they're always teaching us about authority, Yahweh's authority and stuff. And a thought came to my mind about my own life from years ago when I was married to my children's father. And I wrote this thought. I said, authority is important because if we follow Yahweh's authority, then others, by our example, will follow authority correctly. And why this came to my mind is because when I was married to Wayne, he would come home and he would bash our preacher. We were in the Christian church, and this preacher was really good to us. I mean, but I think he was very jealous, but he not only was very critical and wanted to bring this preacher down, he was that same way with me. And it made it really hard for me to follow Wayne's authority. And I found it easy to follow the pastor's authority, but Wayne's authority was really hard because he was harsh and punitive. So I think if we're following Yahweh's authority, and it's by our example, if we're doing it with faith and in love for Yahweh, then others are going to see that, and they're going to pay attention. Maybe they'll come and follow Yahweh's authority and do it more perfectly.
Amen. I appreciate that comment. Thank you. Look, I know a lot of people are thinking, wow, how does he manage to find every week something that has to do with authority? Because it's everywhere. I don't have to look for it. And it's an issue. This is an issue Paul was having with the Corinthian congregation. He was absolutely struggling with their understanding. But notice that he always demonstrates that the authority is vertical. He says, I have authority here, but that's because that authority comes from above. And that authority is a serving authority to serve in the pointing you towards that which is above. And so, yes, you're right. It seems like every week all we do is talk about authority. But if you read your Bible, now that you've heard me talk about it enough, there's very little places you can go where you can't find that's actually the issue that's going on. A challenge with authority. Okay? Now, it's no surprise then that the enemy has encouraged us to do authority so badly so that people would not want authority. Because after all, you had a bad experience with it, and almost everybody in this room has had at least one, if not multiple, bad experiences with authority being done badly. The problem was not authority, it was that it was being done poorly. And that's really the issue. Okay, where's the mic? Okay, Michelle?
My question is, of course, we all know that Messiah, Yeshua, is love, so we should do everything in love. I think that's the fulfillment of the law right there in my heart, that's, also you should fear Yeshua, but it's also done in love. You should love your neighbor as yourself. I think that is just so beautiful. But my question is, doesn't he raise up the next ones, the next remnant to go into Israel? Someone said to me, my neighbor, and their grandmother owns a church across the street, and he's a boy, and I guess he's never heard the name Yeshua because I introduced it to him. But he knew everything about the raising up of the second remnant that will go into the land and that will not fear, and that he was going to make them different than the first. There was can you tell me a little bit more about this new remnant that's going to be able to go into the land and fulfill and everything that the first one was not able to do? I mean, I know that Joshua was able to fulfill, but supposedly he's supposed to make them capable of not fearing, to have what it takes internally to go in, make it to the city of Petra, to flee the Antichrist, to actually, and then he returns and they supernaturally seals up this remnant. It's an amazing story. That the prophecy is so amazing to me. But what is the second one that's supposed to go in the last days, and how are they supposed to? He's supposed to make them different than the first. Do you know anything about that?
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't know anything about that because I don't know anything about what this guy's saying, and mostly everything you said is not right. Okay, because the guy's coming from a place that he doesn't know what he's talking about. But that's not the point. The point is that's where we have to be careful, though. That's what's going on here in Corinth. We got to be careful who we're listening to that may or may not actually know what they're talking about. And they can impress you because you said it was amazing to you, and I'm sure it sounded very amazing. Okay? But you're now going through listening to somebody who pieced the puzzle together in a way that made sense to them, and it could be very impressive. I don't think that the majority of us are going anywhere near Jerusalem until we're changed in a twinkling, meet him in the air as he's headed there to land on the Mount of Olives. That is in the first resurrection, okay? Now, as far as a remnant being supernaturally protected or how that's all going to work, I have not taught you eschatology, and when he gives me permission to, I will. But in the meantime, I would encourage all of you to be very, very, very reluctant to embrace other people, especially mainstream Christians, eschatology, okay? And so that is an eschatology sort of thing, and let's be really reluctant to go about that. Because,
okay, I don't mean to interrupt you, but in the book of Revelation, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm not going to debate the book of Revelation with you.
No, I'm just going to ask you a question.
It's not about this teaching. We can talk about it later. Okay? The teaching isn't talking about the book of Revelation and the end times. All right? Okay, look, you're going to have to, and I did interrupt her on purpose, not because it's her, because you all need to understand. You have to be careful about pushing what's important to you and understand that this is about the teaching today. The end times will play out the way they're going to play out. You need to just, look, I've told you, maybe you haven't heard this because you're new with us, but if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you'll end up where you're supposed to end up. That's all you need to know at this point. I'm not saying that you can't look at other things, but don't worry about the other things. You need to focus on that. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you'll end up where you'll end up. It is so easy to start getting into end-time debates, and I've told you I do not do end-time teachings. Beware false prophets and the Millennium and Kingdom, that's it. You have those two teachings and possibly a part 4 to the Millennium Kingdom, which is really not so much eschatology. It's more about what does or doesn't happen when you die, that kind of thing. But, okay? But that's all I've offered you at this point because that's all he's given me to do. It's not because I don't have an opinion. It's not because I haven't studied it, not because I don't know anything about it. He just has not wanted me to be distracted or the people that I'm teaching to be distracted with the end time stuff. The end time stuff that matters to you is what you're doing will matter. That's what Paul was saying. Yeshua says it. Moses says it. Everywhere in your Bible says it. Do what you're supposed to be doing and you'll be where you're supposed to be. Is that clear? Okay? But let's not get caught up otherwise in debates and in other things or arguments about book of Revelation. You have heard very little teachings that I've given you about the book of Revelation, except in the context of pulling out one or two little particular items like the to he who overcomes with all the 7 congregations mentioned, that each one had an overcoming issue. And if they overcame, they received something. Or the verse that says there are those that have the testimony and the Torah. Otherwise, very little. Today I mentioned that at the very end in Revelation, he's bringing a reward according to what you do. But none of it had to do with end time playing out of the eschatology, what the vials are and what the woes are and who's the martyrs and what's it talking about here and there. We're not going to get into that at this point. Okay? I know that that's the kind of stuff that gets the big crowds and fills the stadiums. Everybody wants to know. But you know what? Most of those people are going to be in the wrong place because they're doing the wrong things, but they're going to have all that information in their head that also is probably wrong. And it has served no purpose. Figure out how to love your Elohim. I like that she said that. It's all about love in the context of the way we observe the commandments. If you're not loving him and loving each other right, none of the other information is going to do you any good. That's right. Was that clear? If you're not figuring out how to love each other and love him, nothing else is going to matter. And you can watch all the eschatology videos you want, whether it's right or wrong. If you haven't figured out the other piece, it will matter nothing. It'll help you zero. Okay, next question. Okay, Nate?
That was just a refresher on when we first met, because you gave me the same speech at Sukkot about 2 years ago. So thank you.
You're welcome. Because at the time you were very much into the eschatology.
I was,
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure I'm thinking correctly, and I appreciate this teaching because reading Hebrews and all these other places are helping me to look at all of this stuff a little more clearly. So if where it talks about the flesh is passing away, or that which was old is passing away, I was reading that and I was thinking, wow, that has to do with, as I'm learning to lift, instead of looking at the Torah, like where it said that Moshe had the veil and they didn't want to look at him, we're actually asking Abba to allow us to lift that veil so we can look more in the perfect Torah and put that on our hearts in a way that we can walk it out in the Spirit. So the flesh is actually starting to pass away. That which is old, or the letter of the law, is passing away in a sense that it's being written on our hearts. So prayerfully, it'll become so much part of us that old letter of the law, we don't need to look at that in order to go, wow, I need to be right with Elohim, because it's the Spirit now that we're walking in the letter. Is that making any sense?
Yep.
Okay, because that's where my mind is kind of.
At some point, you don't need any teachings from me or anybody else telling you to eat kosher or keep Sabbath or observe holy days correctly and not do the other things, because it's now part of who you are. Okay, so from that point of view, I think that's what Nate was talking about. I mean, it's going to be something that you apply, and it's just consistently there. Okay, who's next? Okay, Dawn.
Hi, Rabbi. Wow. My mind is like tripping all over the book. I had never seen that before, again, with the absent from the body. That was amazing. I felt like this was for me. I had a really rough morning, came in late, and I was just like blown away. I think I have like 5 pages of notes in my hand. You're getting me ready for school, aren't you? I see that now. I had a question kind of about something we went over where it talked about, let me see, 5 verse 3. 2 Corinthians 5 verse 3, it says, so that putting it on, we shall not be found naked. So is it a correct assumption? I used to worry about, the wedding, we have to have wedding attire, spiritual wedding attire, and what was that and how do we get it? Am I understanding correctly that if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, that I'll be clothed?
Yes, and I you know what, I skipped that part of the verse because I got distracted with the other thing I was talking about, but there's many times you've heard me teach that, for example, when Adam and Chava saw themselves and realized they were naked, that I've taught you that you realized they were exposed. Not so much that they were naked, but their choices had exposed them and their behavior, because it doesn't happen until after they mess up. Then they realize they're exposed. They're no longer covered necessarily, and I talk about it from a more of a covered by the Father, covered by the spiritual covering type of thing. They've now become exposed. And the same thing I think here is the idea of being naked is being exposed and uncovered. All right? And I didn't get to explain that as part of the verse because I had 50 other things running in my head trying to cover them all. But that's kind of connects to that same kind of point. So if you're doing what you're supposed to do, you will be clothed. But you'll also, more from the idea of not so much clothed, but you'll also be covered. Okay, so the idea of naked had more to do with not having a covering or being uncovered. Okay, Rabbi Tom?
Okay, thank you. You mentioned in your message that basically a lot of things in here are a heart issue. And I was thinking about this, and from comments that I've heard and things I've seen on Facebook by people in and out of the body, a lot of people are getting discouraged and losing heart. And a lot of people are downcast and allowing their shalom to be upset. But in 4:16, 2 Corinthians 4:16, it says, therefore we do not lose heart. But even if our outward man is perishing, the inward man is being renewed day by day. And so we can't do anything about the outward man, but the inward man we can. And we renew it by constantly reviewing the Torah and other parts of the Tanakh and the Brit. and meditating on them every day, every day, every day. And I think we'll come to see that everything points to Torah, and we'll come to see authority in almost everything we read. And I think that should encourage all of us. So, you know, what I got out of your message today was, let's not worry. Let's not worry about the carnal. We have to get off our throne and concentrate on the spiritual.
Amen. Amen. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Who else? Okay, coming around this way. Tamara has her hand up.
He's making fun of my vertically challenged status. Okay, I have a question, and forgive me if you've answered it. It's also in 2 Corinthians 5, at the end of 4, where it's talking about so that what is to die might not be swallowed, or might be swallowed up by life. Could you expound on that?
Say it one more time. Where's the... What?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's 2 Corinthians 5. It's verse 4. It's at the end. Because I know what I interpreted it as, but I just want to make sure that it was correct.
Okay, so that what is to die might be swallowed up by life?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so how are you interpreting that?
Okay, so I've been struggling with, for example, I had a busy week, and my body keeps telling me, just stay home, don't go to the congregation, don't, get some more rest. And I came anyway because I know in my heart that I need to be here and I need to be with my family. And just having to take on new responsibilities from my college classes are, kind of causing me to balance things in a different way that I'm not used to. And so I was wondering if situations, what is to die, like it's supposed to die to that thought that I should, not be here. And all that entails, because I'm going to get swallowed up by
everything
life.
that, okay, we go back to when we talked about the, not walking by sight, but walking by belief, in the way you see it versus the way he sees it. So when you ask yourself, okay, I see it, I'm tired, I want to stay home. How does he see it?
Correct.
Okay, so the way you see it has to die, and the way he sees it has to overflow and swallow you up in life.
Okay.
Okay. Now, by the way, back to verse 3, which is the verse that, and by the way, thank you to both of you 2 in a row to explain that this should be an encouragement to all people that choose or feel like they maybe don't want to come, but if you come, you might receive something special that you needed to hear, and that's why you come. Because Dawn said the same thing, sort of, that you did. But it says here, look, in verse 3, it says, so that having put it on, put what on? All this stuff we've just been talking about, doing it his way, seeing it through his sight, we shall not be found naked, but we'll put it on. We shall not be found uncovered. We won't be exposed. We won't be embarrassed, but we'll be covered. We'll be seen and have favor. So that's just to kind of find the verse that Dawn was talking about. And then in your case, which follows right after that, and because we're covered and we're not exposed, okay, all that we're having die will be covered up and swallowed up in life. And swallowed up is just an idiomatic phrase to say you're just going to be overflowing now. It's like taking the metaphor of the cup that's filled with like sort of muddy water, and you just keep putting the clean water in until it dilutes it out, and it's going to be overflowing to the fact and eventually be clean because you're getting rid of the other. Okay, you have all kinds of metaphors with purging out, or the new wine in a new wineskin and the old wineskin thing. It's all the same ideas of getting rid of and being done with one thing so that the other one can be overflowing. Okay? And really, again, it has to do with mindset and heart. It's not the thing itself, like the law, that's the problem. It's the mindset and the heart as we address these things. Okay? Okay, Michelle?
I just, as I was reading that same verse, for indeed, we who are in this tent groan, being burdened, not because we wish to put it off, but to put it on, so that what is to die might be swallowed up by life. And going off your teaching, where life interchangeable with Shua, Torah, way, truth, that all these burdens and all these things that we experience will be swallowed up by all of that.
Thank you for reading it again, because when you read it out loud, certain words hit me that I didn't hit on. The idea of being burdened and groaning. This goes back to, like we said last time with James chapter 4, okay? That which needs to die, sometimes we want to hold on to it. And so you're going to have to lament and mourn and weep and get it over with. Because you're focusing on that is why you're upset, the thing that you have to let go of, instead of focusing on what you're putting on. And so I'm glad that you read it out loud, because I got to hear it again, and the Ruach could say, look, indeed we are in the tent, and while we're in here, we groan, being burdened, not because we wish to put it off, because we don't. We want to keep it. We like it. There's things about it we don't want to let go of, but because rather we want to be focused on what we need to put on. And so you may have to go back to James 4 and lament and mourn and weep, etc., and just get over it. Because you don't want to let go of that which is comfortable and that which you've enjoyed and you like and all the other things to go into this other place. But if you want it and focus on it bad enough, by taking your eyes off of what you can see and seeing it through his eyes, remember, go back to that whole metaphor too, then you will desire to focus on what you're putting on, not what you're letting go of. Okay? Good point. See, sometimes a verse, if it just gets read enough times, we could pull a whole bunch of stuff out of it. Okay, who's next? Okay, Daweed?
Just a big wow. From the very beginning, you hit me hard. And even though you weren't necessarily solely talking to me, you were, just from the very beginning. And you know my background, and several people here do, but some don't. I came out of Christianity and basically Baptist, Costal, charismatic, kind of interdenominational, non-denominational. And I went through Messianic Judaism, like MJA, which is very focused on bloodline, into more of a Orthodox side of things. Actually going to Orthodox synagogues in Israel and places like that. And I was very focused on, trying to do the Torah. And at the time, I was trying to do the Torah based on what they were doing, but even then, I was focused on my own ways and my own perspectives on how that looked. And so in private, it wasn't even entirely as they saw it. And I never told them that I was a believer in Yeshua. I never tried to push that on them because I knew how much of a big topic that was, and I just didn't want to go there, and I didn't want to give them that kind of grief. Fast forward to having been rejected by them when they found out I was a believer in Yeshua, and then coming to this place, I have found that I, to a certain extent, have been doing some of the same stuff because I've been kind of sort of following what you say, but not fully following it. And I've been letting a lot of the stuff that's in the past influence what I'm doing now. From Christianity and Orthodox Judaism. It's just a big hodgepodge mess. And the words which you were saying in the very beginning, when you were first talking, going into chapter 3, hit me hardest because I realized that, yes, indeed, I've been doing much of the same thing. Either coming from the quote-unquote Gentile / coming into Torah side of things, or from the Orthodox side and seeing it more from that perspective. Either way, I'm hit hard. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and reiterate the fact that you are my discipler, and I am doing my best to follow much more closely what you say.
Amen.
And in some respects, I've been seeing some of the blessings of that. But the bottom line is, there's a lot of stuff that's come out that is a lot of heat, partially because of my CDL class, and I'm in Tamara's same boat. I mean, I'm dealing with a lot of rescheduling stuff and trying to sort stuff out, and I'm also realizing part of the leadership stuff is if I start getting into my fears, my wife starts getting into her fears, and then a whole bunch of our stuff gets stirred up, and so I just wanted
And if
to
you
say,
if you had children, it would spill over to the children. I mean, that's one of those things.
Yes.
That what happens with the leader spills over, and it just keeps spilling and spilling and spilling.
right, and
Yeah.
so I just wanted to thank you for your leadership and thank you for everything that's been happening, and apologize for every bit of grief I've been giving you and all that, because I know that you're trying, and I don't make it easy.
Okay, thank you. All right. Candace?
Yeah, Rabbi, I want to thank you too, because during this lesson, and I'm hoping I'm using the word concentric correctly, that I need to make Yahweh more concentric in my life. In other words, I need to write down every day, I need to write a schedule that includes more of him in my life and less of myself.
All right, let's call it making yourself more Elohim-centric.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
In other words, Elohim-centered.
Well, I need to do that. I
Okay.
mean, I'm not doing enough of that. So
Okay, good.
today's lesson helped me see that I need to do that.
Okay, good. All right, go ahead and bring it back to the live streamers. We'll give David a second to get the camera over there. Okay.
Okay, from Sam Davison, says, can you explain 5:9 more thoroughly? How can it be that our aim to please him if we are in our flesh?
Okay, and I thought I explained that, but I can explain a little bit more. I mean, look, we're not sure here, because half of what Paul's trying to do is get the attention of the congregation as far as focusing on themselves, but a big part of it is focusing on the leadership and himself. And he's trying to apply, I think here he's trying to apply it to himself, saying, so we also, okay, we see that happening here, make it our aim to be well-pleasing to him, whether being at home or being away, okay? Now, he's talking about home now as opposed to being in the body or not in the body, the flesh or not in the flesh. He says, we try to do this when we're here and even when we're not here with you. But also, while we're still in this flesh suit, taking it more literally, we try to be well-pleasing to the Father while we are still dwelling in flesh until we actually are no longer dwelling in flesh. So, I thought I mentioned that, but I'll just say it again just in case. I mean, it's very easy as I'm blasting away all that stuff at warp speed that, that could be missed. But I think that those are the two possible things he's talking about here. Again, remember, he's writing to a group of people that hopefully understood exactly what he was saying, and we're guessing at a bunch of this stuff. So I would say those two interpretations are likely applicable here. Next.
All right, from Olivier and Janet Hoffman. Question 1, Rabbi, I long to be more present with Elohim. Can you give us some concrete things we can do to stay more in his presence and have that vertical awareness continually in our lives?
Well, I mean, you just have to find ways for yourself that will trigger a reminder to always be asking yourself, am I looking at this through my eyes or his eyes? I mean, everybody's going to be different how they can do that and can come up with things that you can do to kind of remind yourself to check in. So just sort of a way to check in on a regular basis. Hey, am I looking at things through his eyes or my eyes? I mean, that's really the thing. Are you in your flesh? Is it a me, me, me thing? Or is it a more him, him, him thing? And so we just have to heighten our awareness. It takes practice, it takes time, but it starts off with what you just did. A desire to do that. So once you at least start off with a desire to do that, at least you're initially, going to make the progress. That's step 1. Okay.
Okay, question 2. Rabbi, would you please explain a bit more chapter 4, verse 13, when Paul quoted, I believed, therefore I spoke. Is this talking about the witness we are supposed to bear?
Well, I mean, look, again, this is going through the same process of where he's trying to make a case for him versus whoever else they're listening to. Now, if you are someone in leadership, which if this is Sam, Sam, you are in leadership to a certain degree with your small group there, then you can say the same thing once you are trained to do the speaking. Right now, you're being trained, so you're doing a lot of listening, okay? But I would be somebody, for example, that would be able to say something, look, having the same spirit of belief according to what has been written, I believe, therefore I spoke. We also believe, therefore we also speak. This is still part of, remember, verse 1 started off with, do we need to begin to prove our qualifications for you? All right? So remember, there's a theme going through all this that didn't stop since verse 1 of chapter 3. Here we are in the middle of chapter 4, almost the end of chapter 4, and we still see that in chapter 5 and going forward in chapter 6. Paul is having a hard time with some people, for whatever reason, starting to listen to other people and not listening to him, and losing the respect of his authority within the group. Next question.
Okay, from Shauna, 2 Corinthians 3:16 cites Exodus 34:34. Would you please talk about that and that verse in light of 2 Corinthians 3:18?
Right, Exodus what?
34:34.
Yeah, no, again, I think I explained this, so I don't see any difference there. I mean, I did say that, in 34:34 it says that when Moses went in to speak to Yahweh, he would remove the veil until he came out, and when he came out, he spoke to the children of Israel what he had been commanded. The idea that he removed it, well, he only needed the veil because the people had a problem looking at him, not because Yahweh would have a problem looking at him. So he removed the veil. I mean, we could, I guess, look at it from the metaphor of when the people decided after the Ten Commandments were given, hey, hold on, we don't want to hear from him directly. Okay? But the thing is here in verse 18, it says, we are not looking on what is seen, but what is not seen. Is that what she asked back to verse 18? Was it 3:18. And we all, as with unveiled face, we see as in the mirror. Okay? So again, with unveiled face, I think we're going back to the mind and the heart all being veiled. He's talking about things being hidden more this way. I know he is quoting from the idea of Exodus, but we're also talking about here, it says, and we all, as with unveiled face, we see as in a mirror the esteem of Yahweh. So we're seeing him straightforward. We're seeing him without veils filtering. Let's be careful that we don't mix the metaphors, because Paul does a great enough job mixing them for us, okay? Because he uses things in 3 different ways, and he's using the same phrase, and sometimes the English from the Greek can get confusing, okay? But he's saying, look, we are now seeing things without filters, okay? We're seeing it unveiled. Remember, he just talked about a veil being on the heart 2-3 verses earlier, okay? And so we have to connect that is more the issue. Verse 13 talked about Moses putting on a veil over his face, okay, because they couldn't look at it straight. Stop being all veiled in me, but start looking at things straight. This is not, by the way, a verse saying that you don't need a middleman, you don't need to go through Moses or a teacher or any of those other things. You do receive things directly, but use it unfiltered. Receive it unfiltered. Be willing to look straight at it and see it for what it is, okay? Next question.
All right, I'm going to combine these two. It's from Pete Lamb and Leanne. They're referring to, it says, please clear up what is meant in 2 Corinthians 5:21, where it says that he was made sin. And they're both kind of asking, is this speaking of the end where Yeshua asked why God has forsaken him? That was from Pete Lamb. And
all right, look, again, we are guessing when we read Paul's letters. I will give you my guess. Everything I said today was my best guess interpretation of what Paul was really saying, because we don't have Paul here to tell us, and he's writing in a language from 2,000 years ago, with phrases and stuff. My best guess here, and I think I said this already in the teaching, is that he, by doing what he did, took that which otherwise could not be taken upon himself to remove it from us in terms of our rap sheet. Okay? That's the ordinances written against us. They used to put on the cross or on the stake when they would crucify somebody, the rap sheet. In other words, all the charges against you. So he's using a phrase idiomatically here, he who knew no sin, to be sin for us. Not that he was sin for us, but he took the rap sheet to himself so that we don't have that being held against us anymore. Now, of course, once you embrace him, everything you do forward after that, you own it. Okay? But when you repent, it could get added to what he took away. So that you don't have the ultimate penalty, which is you are now permanently separated from the camp. It's a restoration sort of phraseology he's putting there about being restored, but it's a way that Paul's just using the phrase, he who knew no sin, because he knew no sin. Well, if he knew no sin, how could he become sin for us? Well, because he took upon himself the rap sheet, so that we could become the righteousness, so that we would no longer look stained and unrighteous. Next question.
Okay, from Kui Lee, if we've had bad authority in our lives and still struggle with authority, how can we learn to submit to proper authority?
This is a really good question. It comes up a lot. The best thing to do is you're going to have to taste of it. Give it 6 months. Give it a year. I did that with Nate. I said, listen, it's up to you guys, but I said, look, give me a year and see what happens. I mean, do it. And I mean, if it looks really, you've had enough experience that if something looks really bad, you'll stop and you'll run away from it. But trust it, try it, taste of it, and see. You have to first intellectualize and rationalize to yourself and understand that the structure should be vertical and that there's a right structure, even if it's been done badly, and that you need to find it. Ephesians 4 and the fivefold ministry. You need to find those guys. Well, then the only way you're going to know if you found them is to try it. You have to try it and taste of it. But you're not going to know after 5 minutes. You're going to have to give it 6 months, a year at least to see. And then just sitting around is not tasting of it. You need to call that leadership, meet with that leadership, ask that leadership for help and guidance, and see what kind of counsel and guidance you get. And then when you submit to it, see what kind of fruit you get. As several people in here have said, they've gotten guidance, they didn't like it, they didn't agree with it, but they did it anyway and they got the fruit. That's submission. And praise Yah for that. Okay? But the only way to get there is you have to be willing. Look, it's like the person that had their heart broken 3 or 4 or 5 times. It happens a lot when we're teenagers. Yet somehow we're willing to give it another try until we finally find the right one. If you gave up just because you had your heart broken a few times, you'd never find the right one or give that right one a chance. You have to keep trying. But you only keep trying because you believe that there is a right one, whether it's leadership or a spouse. That's why you keep trying. Okay? And so when you recognize that the leadership structure is right, even if though you haven't experienced it, then keep looking for a place where you can experience it. Well, when I say experience, keep looking for a place where you can experience it hopefully correctly. Look for the place that has the best opportunity to possibly do it right. And of course, that's why I like when people stand up around the room and give their testimony, so to speak, of how they have experienced it, because then that should encourage people to give it a shot. Because you have people telling you, we have tasted of it, and it worked. Okay? And the places where and by the way, when you hear people telling you that, bad-mouthing leadership when others are telling you it worked, find out if the person that says it didn't work actually tasted of it, or what their experience was before you start listening to because there are people out there attacking me just as well as the people here saying that it's worked very well for them. But you know what? Find out the attackers how much experience they actually have had and how much they actually interacted and how much counseling they actually did. As opposed to listening to like Nate and Dawn and some of the others here, who have interacted on an extensive basis and have that experience. Tricia, etc. People, Dawid and his wife, Manny and Michelle. There are people that have interacted with me a lot more. Find out the comparison. Ask the people that are saying negative things, well, how much did you actually interact with them? How much counseling did you do? What things did he recommend for you to do in counsel that you did blew up in your face? Okay, nothing. I'm not saying that cockily. I just know that I haven't given anybody yet anything that blew up in their face. Okay? So next question.
From Roy Bolsher-Coates, chapter 3, verse 14, was it Yahweh that hardened their minds as he hardened Pharaoh's heart, or was it just the leadership of the day that caused the disruption that led to minds hardening?
No, look, remember, in Pharaoh's day, the hardening was taking somebody who already had a disposition and encouraging it to go in the direction it already wanted to go. This is essentially not an Elohim thing. It's just people's hearts are hardened because they have it set in the direction they want to go. Now, Elohim got involved in the Pharaoh thing because he wasn't through with Pharaoh, because Pharaoh was starting to think like, well, he was going to let them go, but he really didn't want to let them go. In your life that's being talked about here, and Paul's talking about the Corinthians' lives, their hearts were hardened because they were wanting to go in the direction they wanted to go, which didn't match up with what Yah wanted them to do. So yes, there's a linkage from the point of view that it still has to do with being disposed to go in the direction you want to go. But no, this is not Elohim. As a matter of fact, it talks about the master of this age having involvement also in encouraging them to do what they want to do, to go their way. Next question. By the way, for all you wannabe teachers out there, see how much fun this can be? But I don't mind doing this because I know it's important and necessary. But I'm just saying is, appreciate that you probably don't find other teachers out there, especially open mic, online, willing to take any question, so to speak, because it could be anything. I'm just saying, that's not this is almost like Paul saying, do I need to recommend myself? It says, you have a teacher willing to do things that others don't do. Maybe that matters, maybe it doesn't matter, but, just pointing that out. Okay? Next question. Because after all, sometimes the questions go as long as the teaching, or longer.
I think that's it for anything that's related to today's teaching.
Okay, all those unrelated things, please contact us directly if you still want answers to those questions. Nate?
I just wanted to, if I might, reiterate what you said about following leadership. If you're going to find a teacher that you've vetted, I think Abba gives us an opportunity to learn about how we can physically walk out the fullness of the intent of Torah by allowing us to fall under leadership in the fullness of the intent of Torah, trusting that Abba is going to help us get to the kingdom. If we kind of do it halfway and not trust that Abba is going to work through you, then we're just being like the Israelites before they went into the land and not trusting our Father. We need to give it everything, even if we don't understand it, the fullness of the intent with all of our heart, all of our soul, and all of our strength in order to please Abba and show him that we're ready. We'll take the fruit, Abba. We see the fruit. We trust it. We trust you that you're going to help us to get from point A to point B.
Amen. Look, none of this even should remotely sound like blind following. This is wide-eyed, paying attention, because I want you to be paying attention to what's being done, what's being counseled, how it's working. We're not asking, and should never be asking for any kind of blind, just submission or whatever, but taking an opportunity to taste of it. In other words, let's just try it, but I'm going to pay attention to how it's working and what the results are and how I felt. You can say, how did I feel when Rabbi said this? How did I feel when that was being given? And pay attention to all of the details. I want you to have a higher paying attention, not less. I don't want you just to blindly. There's no point to that. But you should have an incredibly high level of awareness as you counsel and then as you apply what's counseled to see how it plays through. Then you'll know if what you're doing is in the right function, in the right way, in the right structure, etc. Okay? Because otherwise people say, oh, you just want everybody just to do the... No, I don't. I want you to do what I just said. Have the highest level of awareness, but give it a try. But what's a try? Well, you're going to have to really do it for a while. That means even if you don't like it, you do it anyway. It's not going to hurt anything. I'm not going to wreck any major decisions in your life. I'm not even going to get involved in anything that's your own personal stuff unless you ask me to do that. And even then, I may tell you I don't want to get involved in your very personal stuff. If it's halachic, if it's the Torah, if it's the walk, if it's a husband and wife, if it's a parent and child, and you would like some guidance. But if you don't apply it, then you'll never know if it would have worked. You have to try it, okay? You can't just say, well, I didn't like what he said, so the counsel was no good. How do you know? Maybe it would have worked. You got to try it, okay? And trust me, every one of the people that gets up here and says that they've tried it and it worked will all tell you that often enough they didn't agree or didn't like it, but they did it anyway. And then it worked. Okay, so it's not like they just sitting there just going, wow, I agree with everything Rabbi says, and I just do whatever he says because I agree with everything. That does not happen. Okay? But when they do it anyway, they're finally walking in submission, something we really, all human beings, struggle with. And submission, as I've said 1,000,000 times, doesn't come into play until you disagree or don't like what you're being asked to do or not do. Okay, when you don't like what the authority's telling you, that's when submission comes in. When you don't agree, otherwise it's not submission. It's agreement. I've had husbands and wives say, well, I submit to him all the time, the wife will say, and I'm like, okay, when you agree with him or when you disagree with him? Because when you agree, it's not submission. You just agree. Of course you're going to do it. You agree. You're not submitting to anything. Submission means subjugating what I want for what you want, or listening to you even though I don't agree or don't like it, because I'm going to submit. I'm going to subjugate my desire, my will to yours. That doesn't happen until we disagree. If we agree, we're just both merrily just running along. Okay? Anyway, that should cover it. Good? Yeah, go get the children. All right, and actually you can let them know in there. Frederick, you can do it. Just go ahead and let the Gadol class know because they're in there actually. All right. Look, we're hopefully going to get through some of these Brit Hadashah verses and sections where we're really going to unravel some of the things that have been said over and over and over and over again in a wrong way, like this whole absent the body thing, or the letter kills and the spirit brings life, and understand what that's all about so we're not understanding it from the mainstream indoctrination from the last 1,500, 2,000 years, whatever. Right, the absent the body verses sometimes used for rapturing and all that kind of stuff or whatever. But it's not talking about that at all. When I'm in my flesh, I am not thinking vertically. Can we all agree? When you're in your flesh, you're not thinking of Messiah, you're not thinking about Yahweh, you're not thinking about anything but your flesh. When your mind and your head and your heart is on Messiah, guess what? Then you're not in your flesh. You're not in the body. You're not thinking about your fleshly needs. You're thinking about what he desires and what he wants. It's very simple. Once you hear it, you go, oh my gosh, it's so simple. That's so obvious. But it's not obvious until the Ruach, through a teacher, shares it. That's kind of the way the system is set up, unfortunately. It would be nice if he just revealed the same thing and everybody was just on the same page. But this is the system he's chosen and the structure he has. Okay? Bring that to Manny. He's going to be doing, up here, he's going to be doing the closing. All right, so we have the Gadol class in here. We're waiting for the children to come down. They're coming. How'd Gadol class go? Good. What was that? Okay. Zane, how do you pronounce Samson's name? Okay, we're not doing that. Okay. All right, be nice. Shimshon. Well, you have to use the Hebrew. For some reason, it sounds more manly in the English. Samson. All right, we got some of the children back in here. So once they all get in here, we will go ahead and have everybody rise for Mandy to close in prayer. We're just waiting for the nursing moms and the little ones that are coming from, because we got the Katan Bet. We're needing Aleph to come down, and so we got a few more little ones coming. Do you see them yet? No. It takes a little bit longer to get all their act together and get them to organize and come down the stairs, so no problem. So were you guys, was I loud in that room? Could you hear me loud into that room? Was that hard or not too much? He didn't what? Oh, he didn't go all the way to the second room. You only went to the main room and just told them? Okay, Katan Bet and Katan Bet teachers, when whoever comes up to say it, somebody needs to know to go back and tell the people in the back that we're coming down. Don't just come down. You're going to have to spread the word. Okay, because Gabriel didn't know. That's okay. It's not your fault. You didn't know. You're down here all the time. How do you know what's going on up there? You can't know. All right, and was there anything else I needed to mention real quick? Let's see. All right, so sundown today is 8:55, almost 9 o'clock, just so you know. I will be doing some counseling with people after the oneg. So if anybody wants to get on that list, you can come find me. All right? And then, since it's been a while, we might have to go to, exactly. Okay, so. And that's only because George wants to go. George is like, what? I didn't say nothing. Here they come? Okay. Yeah, we're going to have to find a much more efficient and effective way to get the word up to them and back so we're not just standing around stalling for time. All right, there's the Aleph class, and then do we have some of the moms still coming down, or is everybody down pretty much? We have a few moms. All right. Did the children have a memory verse? You guys want to do it now while we're waiting? Are they ready? No? All right, well, actually, the moms are down here too now, so are we good? Almost. They're coming. This is making for scintillating engagement with those on live stream, just watching me wait. That's right, we're all learning patience. We're good? Okay, they're still staying up there for their own reasons. Okay, so if everybody would go ahead and rise. And then Manny will go ahead and close us in prayer.
Father, you are so good. Thank you so much for giving us a day that we can come, refresh ourselves, and get ready for the week, Father. Thank you for your Torah. Thank you for this teacher. Thank you for allowing us a place to come and serve you, learn from you, and worship you. Father, I ask that you be with us, that you help us to continually grow closer to you, to create a closer relationship with you, that we may continually learn your word, walk your word, and that we may make you proud, Father. Thank you. Be with us as we go out through the day, that we may mirror who you are, that people may know who we are by what we do. Thank you, Father, and I ask all this in Yeshua's mighty name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. Okay, so if anybody wants to be on camera, come on up. We're going to do our little Shabbat Shalom wave here.
Candace, come on. Yeah. You're good. Yeah, that's good.
Aren't you gonna?
All right, we got a few more coming in here. Okay, Jonathan, is everybody on camera? We're all good? All right. You guys know the routine. On 3, we're going to wish them a Shabbat Shalom, and then we're going to say Shavua Tov and tell them how much we love them, because we know that even though they're out there, that they're here in our hearts. And so absent the congregation, then never mind. Okay, so on the live stream and then present, we consider you part of this just as much as if you were here, just so you know. All right, here we go. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Shabbat.